Joshua Judges. Now after the death of Moses, the slave of YHWH, it came about that YHWH spoke to Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister saying, Moses my slave is dead, now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land that I bestow to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, that have I given to you as I said to Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon even to the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea toward the going down of the sun, will be your coast. There will not be anyone able to stand before you all the days of your life, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you, I will not fail you, nor forsake you. Be strong and of a good courage, for to this people will you divide for an inheritance this land that I adjured unto their forefathers to give them. Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law, that Moses my slave commanded you, turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, so that you may prosper wherever you go. This scroll of the law will not depart out of your mouth, but you will meditate on it day and night, so that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, neither be dismayed, because YHWH Elohim is with you wherever you go. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people saying, Pass through the encampment and command the people saying, Prepare your provisions, because within 3 days you will pass over this Jordan, to go in to possess the land that YHWH Elohim bestows to you to take possession of. And to the Reubenites and to the Gadites, and to half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua spoke saying, Remember the word that Moses the slave of YHWH commanded you saying, YHWH Elohim has given you rest and has given you this land. Your women, your little ones and your cattle, will remain in the land that Moses gave you on this side of Jordan, but you will pass before your brethren armed, all the mighty men of valor, will help them. Until YHWH has given your brethren rest, as he has given you, and they also have possessed the land that YHWH Elohim bestows to them. Then you will return to the land of your possession and enjoy it, that Moses, YHWH's slave, gave to you on this side Jordan toward the sunrise, east. And they answered Joshua saying, All that you command us we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. According as we listened to Moses in all things, so will we obey you, only YHWH Elohim is with you, as he was with Moses. Whoever he is that rebels against your commandment, and will not listen to your words in all that you command him, he will be put to death, only be strong and of a good courage. And Joshua the son of Nun sent out of Shittim 2 men to spy secretly, saying, Go view the land, even Jericho. And they went, and came into the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho saying, See, there came men in here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country. And the king of Jericho sent to Rahab saying, Bring out the men that are come to you, that are entered into your house, because they are come to search out all the country. But the woman took the 2 men and hid them, and replied thus, There came men to me, but I do not know where they are, now. And it came about when the gate was shut after dark, that the men went out, where the men went I do not know, pursue after them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with the stalks of flax, that she had laid in order upon the roof. And the men pursued after them on the road to Jordan to the fords, and as soon as they that pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. And before they were laid down, she came up to them on the roof, and she said to the men, I know that YHWH has given you the land, and that your terror has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. Because we have heard how YHWH dried up the water of the Red Sea for you, when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites, that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon, and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt, neither did there remain any more courage in anyone, because of you, for YHWH your Elohim, he is Elohim in the cosmos above, and in the earth beneath. Now therefore, I pray you, adjure to me by YHWH, since I have showed you kindness, that you will also show kindness to my dad's house, and give me a true token, and that you will save alive my dad and my mother, and my brothers and sisters, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. Then the men answered her, Our life for yours, if you utter not this our business. And it will be, when YHWH has given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, because her house was on the town wall, for she lived on the wall. And she said to them, Go to the mountain, unless the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there for 3 days, until the pursuers are returned, and afterward you may go on your way. Then the men replied to her, We will be blameless of this your oath that you have made us adjure. Look, when we come into the land, you will bind this line of scarlet thread in the window that you did let us down by, and you will bring your dad, and your mother, and your family, and all your dad's household, home to you. And it will be, that whoever will go out of the doors of your house into the street, his blood will be on his own head. And we will be guiltless, and whoever will be with you in the house, his blood will be on our head, if any hand is upon him. And if you utter this our business, then we will be exempt of your oath that you have made us adjure. And she said, according to your words, so be it. And she sent them away and they departed, and she bound the scarlet line in the window. Then they went, and came to the mountain and stayed there 3 days, until the pursuers were returned, and the pursuers sought them throughout all the road, but found them not. So the 2 men returned and descended from the mountain, and passed over, and came to Joshua the son of Nun, and told him all things that befell them. And they said to Joshua, truly YHWH has delivered into our hands all the land, for even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they pulled up from Shittim and came to Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. And it came to pass after 3 days, that the officers went through the encampment, and they commanded the people saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of YHWH Elohim, and the priests the Levites bearing it, then you will pull up from your place and go after it. Still there will be a space between you and it, about 1,000 yards by measure, do not come near to it, so that you may know the way by which you must go, because you have not passed this way before. And Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, because tomorrow YHWH will do wonders among you. And Joshua spoke to the priests saying, take up the ark of the covenant, and pass over before the people. And they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And YHWH said to Joshua, this day will I begin to magnify you in the sight of all Israel so that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And you will command the priests that bear the ark of the covenant saying, when you are come to the brink of the water of Jordan, you will stand still in the Jordan River. And Joshua said to the children of Israel, come near and hear the words of YHWH Elohim. Then Joshua said, hereby you will know that the living Elohim is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and the Jebusites. Observe, the ark of the covenant of YHWH of all the earth passes over before you into Jordan. Now therefore take 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man. And it will come about, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of YHWH, the YHWH of all the earth, will rest in the waters of Jordan. Then the waters of the Jordan River will be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they will stand upon a heap, pile up. And it came to pass, when the people pulled up from their tents, to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that carried the ark were come to Jordan, and the feet of the priests that carried the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan overflows all its banks all the time of harvest, that the waters stand, those coming down from above have risen, one heap, very far above Adam the city, that is at the side of Zaretan. And those going down by the sea of the plain, the salt sea, have been completely cut off, and the people have passed through opposite Jericho, and the priests that carried the ark of the covenant of YHWH stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan River, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground, until all the people were passed clean over the Jordan River. And it came about, when all the people were clean passed over Jordan, that YHWH spoke to Joshua saying, take 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe a man, and command them saying, pick up for you from this place, from the middle of the Jordan River, from the established standing place of the feet of the priests, 12 stones. And you have removed them over with you, and placed them in the lodging place in which you lodge tonight. Then Joshua called the 12 men, whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, out of every tribe a man, and Joshua said to them, pass over before the ark of YHWH Elohim into the middle of Jordan, and take up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come saying, what is the meaning of these stones? Then you will answer them, that the waters of Jordan River were cut off before the ark of the covenant of YHWH, when it passed over Jordan, the waters of Jordan were cut off, and these stones will be for a memorial to the children of Israel for the ages. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the middle of Jordan, as YHWH spoke to Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests that carried the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there to this day. Because the priests that carried the ark stood in the middle of Jordan, until everything was finished that YHWH commanded Joshua to speak to the people, according to all that Moses commanded Joshua, and the people hurried and passed over. And it came about, when all the people were clean passed over, that the ark of Yhwh passed over, and the priests in the presence of the people. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad, and one half of the tribe of Manasseh, passed over armed before the children of Israel, as Moses spoke to them. About 40,000 prepared for war passed over before Yhwh to battle, to the plains of Jericho. On that day Yhwh magnified Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moses, all the days of his life. And Yhwh spoke to Joshua saying, Command the priests that bear the ark of the testimony, that they come up out of Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests saying, Come up out of Jordan. And it came about, when the priests that carried the ark of the covenant of Yhwh were come up out of the middle of Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up unto the dry land, that the waters of Jordan returned to their place, and flowed over all its banks, as they did before. And the people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and encamped in Gilgal, in the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones that they took out of Jordan, did Joshua raise up in Gilgal. And he spoke to the children of Israel saying, When your children will ask their fathers in times to come saying, What do these stones mean? Then you will let your children know saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. Because Yhwh Elohim dried up the waters of Jordan from before you, until you were passed over, as Yhwh Elohim did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us, until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of Yhwh, that it is strong, that you might fear Yhwh Elohim for the ages. And it came about, when all the kings of the Amorites that were on the side of Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, that were by the sea, heard that Yhwh had dried up the waters of Jordan from before the children of Israel, until we were passed over, that their hearts melted, neither was there spirit in them any more, because of the children of Israel. At that time Yhwh said to Joshua, Make sharp knives, and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. Then Joshua made himself sharp knives, and circumcised the children of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise all the people that came out of Egypt, that were males, even all the men of war, died in the uninhabited places by the road, after they came out of Egypt. Now all the people that came out were circumcised, but all the people that were born in the uninhabited places by the road as they came out of Egypt, those ones they had not circumcised. Because the children of Israel walked 40 years in the uninhabited places, until all the people that were men of war that came out of Egypt, were consumed. Because they obeyed not the voice of Yhwh, unto whom Yhwh adjured that he would not show them the land that Yhwh adjured to their fathers, that he would give to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. And their children, whom he raised up in their place, those ones Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised, because they had not circumcised them by the road. And it came about, when they had done circumcising all the people, that they stayed in their places in the camp, until they were restored to vitality. Yhwh spoke to Joshua, This day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Therefore the name of the standing place is called Gilgal to this day. And the children of Israel encamped in Gilgal, and observed the Passover on the 14th day of the month at sunset in the plains of Jericho. And they did eat of the old produce of the land on the next day after the Passover, unleavened bread, and roasted, corn or grain, in the same day. And the manna ceased on the next day after they had eaten from the old produce of the land, neither had the children of Israel manna any more, but they did eat from the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. And it came about, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, there stood a man opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand, and Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us, or for our enemies? And he replied, No, but as captain of the army of Yhwh am I now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the land and did worship, and said to him, What says my master to his slave? And the captain of Yhwh's army replied to Joshua, Untie your shoe from off your foot, because the standing place where you stand is sacred. And Joshua did so. Now Jericho was closed up because of the children of Israel, none went out, and none came in. And Yhwh said to Joshua, See, I have given into your hand Jericho, and its king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And you will walk around the city, all you men of war, and encircle the city once. You will repeat this for 6 days. And 7 priests will bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and on the 7th day you will walk around the city 7 times, and the priests will blow with the trumpets. And it will come about, that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people will shout with a great shout, and the walls of the city will fall down flat, and the people will ascend up every man over against him. And Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, Take up the ark of the covenant and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of YHWH. And he said to the people, Pass on and walk around the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of YHWH. And it came about when Joshua had spoken to the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before YHWH, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of YHWH followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the rearguard came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua had commanded the people saying, You will not shout, nor make any noise with your voices, neither will any word proceed out of your mouth until the day I command you to shout, then you will shout. So the ark of YHWH encircled the city, going around it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose early in the morning and the priests took up the ark of YHWH. And 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of YHWH proceeded on, and blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them, but the rearguard came after the ark of YHWH, the priests going on, and blowing with the trumpets. And the second day they walked around the city once, and returned into the camp, so they repeated this for 6 days. And it came about on the 7th day, that they got up early around the sunrise time of the day, and walked around the city in the same way 7 times. Only on that day they encircled the city 7 times. And it came about at the 7th time, when the priests blew with the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, Shout! Because YHWH has given you the city. And the city will be devoted to destruction, even it and all that are in it, to YHWH, only Rahab the prostitute will live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And you, altogether guard yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, unless you make yourselves dedicated to destruction, when you take of the things devoted to destruction, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. But all the silver, gold, and vessels of brass and iron are set apart for YHWH, they will come into the treasury of YHWH. So the people shouted when the priests blew with the trumpets. And it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the walls fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, each over against him, and they captured the city. And they devoted to destruction all that were in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox, sheep, and donkey, with the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said to the 2 men that had spied out the country, Go into the whore's house, and bring out from there the woman, and all that she has, as you adjured to her. And the young men that were spies went in and brought out Rahab, and her dad, mother, and her family, and all that she had, and they brought out all her relatives, and left them outside the camp of Israel. And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was in it, only the silver, gold, and the vessels of brass and of iron, they put into the treasury of the house of YHWH. And Joshua saved Rahab the prostitute alive, and her dad's household, and all that she had, and she lived in Israel even to this day, because she hid the messengers that Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. And Joshua adjured them at that time saying, Cursed is the man before YHWH, that raises up and builds this city Jericho, he will lay the foundation of it in his firstborn, and in his youngest son will he set up the gates of it. So YHWH was with Joshua, and his fame was reported throughout all the lands. But the children of Israel committed a trespass in the things devoted to destruction. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, who took of the things devoted to destruction, and the anger of YHWH burned against the children of Israel. And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, that is beside Bethaven, on the east side of Bethel, and spoke to them saying, Go up and view the land. And the men went up and viewed Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said to him, Let not all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and attack Ai, and make not all the people to labor there, for they are but few. So there went up to there from the people about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai killed of them, about 36 men, and pursued them before the gate to Shebarim, and they killed them in Morad, and the heart of the people melted and became as water. And Joshua ripped his clothes, and fell to the ground upon his face before the ark of YHWH until sunset, he and the elders of Israel, and put dust upon their heads. And Joshua said, Alas, O Adonai YHWH, why have you at all brought this people over Jordan, to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? Would to Elohim we had been content, and live on the other side of the Jordan. O Adonai, what will I say, when Israel turns their backs before their enemies? Because the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and will surround us, and cut off our name from the earth, and what will you do for your great name? YHWH replied to Joshua, Get yourself up, why be cast down like this on your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant pledge that I commanded them, for they have even taken of the things devoted to destruction, and have also stolen, and dissembled also, and they have put it even among their own stuff. Therefore the children of Israel could not stand before their enemies, but turned their backs before their enemies, because they were dedicated to destruction. Neither will I be with you any more, except you destroy the things devoted to destruction from among you. Up, consecrate the people and say, consecrate yourselves against tomorrow, for YHWH Elohim of Israel declares, there is a thing devoted to destruction in the middle of you, O Israel, you cannot stand before your enemies, until you take away the thing devoted to destruction from among you. In the morning therefore you will be brought according to your tribes, and it will be that the tribe that YHWH takes will come according to their families, and the family that YHWH will take will come by households, and the household that YHWH will take will come man by man. And it will be, that he that is taken, with the thing devoted to destruction will be burnt with fire, he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant pledge of YHWH, and because he has produced disgrace in Israel. So Joshua got up early in the morning, and brought Israel by their tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken, and he brought the family of Judah, and he took the family of the Zarites, and he brought the family of the Zarites man by man, and Zabdi was taken, and he brought his household man by man, and Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was taken. And Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to YHWH Elohim of Israel, and make confession to him, and tell me now what you have done, hide it not from me. And Achan answered Joshua and said, indeed I have sinned against YHWH Elohim of Israel, and thus have I done, when I saw among the spoils a costly Babylonian cloak, and 200 shekels, 5 pounds, of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels, 1¼ pounds, weight, then I coveted them and took them, and see, they are hidden in the ground in the middle of my tent, and the silver is under it. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and lo, it was hidden in his tent, and the silver under it. And they took them out of the middle of the tent, and brought them to Joshua, and to all the children of Israel, and laid them out before YHWH. And Joshua, and all Israel with him, took Achan, the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the cloak, and the wedge of gold, and his sons and his daughters, and his oxen, and his donkeys, and his sheep, and his tent, and all that he had, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. Then Joshua said, why have you troubled us? YHWH will trouble you this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and burnt them with fire, after they had stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones to this day. So YHWH turned from the fierceness of his anger. Therefore the name of that place was called, the Valley of Achor, to this day. Then YHWH spoke to Joshua, fear not, neither be you dismayed, take all the people of war with you, and get up, go up to Ai, see, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land, and you will do to Ai and her king as you did to Jericho and her king, only the spoil and the cattle thereof, will you take for a plunder to yourselves, lay yourself an ambush for the city behind it. So Joshua got up and all the people of war, to go up against Ai, and Joshua chose out 30,000 mighty men of valor, and sent them away by night. And he commanded them saying, look, you will lie in wait against the city, even behind the city, go not very far from the city, but be you everyone ready, and I, and all the people that are with me, will approach to the city, and it will come about when they come out against us, as at the first, that we will flee before them, for they will come out after us, until we have drawn them from the city, because they will say, they flee before us, as at the first, therefore we will flee before them. Then you will rise up from the ambush and seize upon the city, because YHWH Elohim will deliver it into your hand. And it will be, when you have taken the city, that you will set the city on fire, according to the commandment of YHWH will you do it. See, I have commanded you. Joshua therefore sent them out, and they went to lie in ambush, and stayed between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of Ai, but Joshua lodged that night among the people. And Joshua got up early in the morning and numbered the people and went up, he and the elders of Israel, before the people to Ai. And all the people, even the people of war that were with him, went up, and drew near, and came before the city, and pitched on the north side of Ai, now there was a valley between them and Ai. And he took about 5,000 men, and set them to lie in ambush between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of the city. And when they had set the people, even all the armed camp that was on the north of the city, and its rear on the west of the city, Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. And it came about, when the king of Ai saw it, that they hurried and got up early, and the men of the city went out against Israel to battle. He and all his people, at a time appointed, before the plain, and he did not know that an ambush was against him, on the rear of the city. So Joshua and all Israel made as if they were beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. And all the people that were in Ai were called together to pursue after them, and they pursued after Joshua, and were drawn away from the city. And there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel, that went not out after Israel, and they left the city open, and pursued after Israel. And Yhwh spoke to Joshua, Stretch out the spear that is in your hand toward Ai, because I will give it into your hand. And Joshua stretched out the spear that he had in his hand toward the city. And the ambush got up quickly out of their place, and they ran as soon as he had stretched out his hand, and they entered into the city and took it, and hurried and set the city on fire. And when the men of Ai looked behind them, they saw, and observed the smoke of the city as it ascended up in the skies. Then they had no power to flee this way or that way, and the people that fled to the wilderness turned back upon their pursuers. And when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended, then they turned again and killed the men of Ai. And the other issued out of the city against them, so they were in the middle of Israel, some on this side, and some on that side, and they killed them, so that they let none of them remain or escape. And the king of Ai they took alive, and brought him to Joshua. And it came about, when Israel had made an end of killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the wilderness where they chased them. And when they were all fallen on by the edge of the sword, until they were consumed, then all the Israelites returned to Ai, and attacked it with the edge of the sword. And so it was, that all that fell that day, both of men and women were 12,000, even all the people of Ai. Because Joshua drew not his hand back, when he stretched out the spear, until he had devoted to destruction all the inhabitants of Ai. Only the cattle and the spoil of that city Israel took for a plunder to themselves, according to the word of Yhwh that he commanded Joshua. And Joshua burnt Ai, and made it a heap for the ages, even a desolation to this day. And the king of Ai he hanged on a tree until sunset. And as soon as the sun was down, Joshua commanded that they should take his corpse down from the tree, and cast it toward the entering of the gate of the city, and raise on it a great heap of stones that remains to this day. Then Joshua built an altar to Yhwh Elohim of Israel in Mount Ebal. As Moses, the slave of Yhwh, commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the scroll of the Torah of Moses, an altar of whole stones, over which no man has lifted up any iron. And they offered on it burnt offerings to Yhwh, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he engraved there upon the stones a copy of the Torah of Moses, that he wrote in the presence of the children of Israel. And all Israel, and their elders, and officers, and their judges, stood on this side of the ark and on that side before the priests the Levites, which carried the ark of the covenant of Yhwh. These, as well as the foreigner, as he that was born among them, half of them opposite Mount Gerizim, and half of them opposite Mount Ebal, as Moses the slave of Yhwh had commanded before, that they should bless the people of Israel. And afterward he read all the words of the law, the blessings and cursings, according to all that is written in the scroll of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses commanded, that Joshua read not before all the company of Israel, with the women, and the little ones, and the foreigners that were traveling among them. And it came about, when all the kings that were on this side of Jordan, in the hills and in the valleys, and in all the coasts of the great sea opposite Lebanon, the Hittite, Amorite, Canaanite, Perizzite, Hivite, and the Jebusite, heard of these things, that they gathered themselves together, to fight with Joshua and with Israel, with one accord. And when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai, they did work craftily, and went and made as if they had been ambassadors, and took old sacks upon their donkeys, and wine bottles, old and torn, and bound up, and old shoes with patches upon their feet, and old garments upon them, and all the bread of their provision was dry and moldy. And they went to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, We are come from a far country, now therefore make you a treaty with us. And the men of Israel said to the Hivites, Perhaps you live among us, and how will we make a treaty with you? And they replied to Joshua, We are your slaves. And Joshua said to them, Who are you? And from where do you come? And they replied to him, From a very far country your slaves are come because of the name of Yhwh Elohim, because we have heard the fame of him and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites, that were beyond Jordan, to Sihon king of Heshbon, and to Og king of Bashan, that was at Ashtaroth. Therefore our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spoke to us saying, Take provisions with you for the journey, and go to meet them and say to them, We are your slaves, therefore now make you a treaty with us. This our bread we took hot for our provision out of our houses on the day we came out to go to you, but now look, it is dry and it is moldy. And these bottles of wine, that we filled were new, and look, they are torn, and our garments and our shoes have become old by reason of the very long journey. And the men took of their provision, and the mouth of YHWH they have not asked, counsel of. So Joshua made peace with them, and made a treaty with them, to let them live, and the chiefs of the company adjured to them. And it came to pass at the end of 3 days after they had made a treaty with them, then they heard that they were their neighbors and that they lived among them. And the children of Israel journeyed and came to their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kirath-Jearim. And the children of Israel did not kill them, because the chiefs of the company had adjured to them by YHWH Elohim of Israel. And all the company murmured against the chiefs. But all the chiefs replied to all the company, We have adjured to them by YHWH Elohim of Israel, now therefore we may not touch them. This we will do to them, we will even let them live, unless anger is upon us, because of the oath that we adjured to them. And the chiefs said to them, Let them live, but let them be cutters of wood and drawers of water for all the company, as the chiefs had promised them. Then Joshua called for them and he spoke to them saying, Therefore you have beguiled us saying, We are very far from you, when you lived among us. Now therefore you are cursed, and there will be none of you that are freed from being slaves, and cutters of wood and drawers of water for the house of my Elohim. And they answered Joshua and said, Because it was certainly told your slaves, how that YHWH Elohim commanded his slave Moses to give you all the land, and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you, therefore we were very afraid for our lives because of you, and have done this thing. And now look, we are in your hand, as it seems good and right to you to do to us, do. And so did he to them, and delivered them out of the hand of the children of Israel, so that they killed them not. And Joshua made them that day cutters of wood and drawers of water for the company, and for the altar of YHWH, even to this day, in the place that he should choose. Now it came about when Adonizedek king of Jerusalem had heard how Joshua had taken Ai, and had devoted it to destruction, as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel, and were among them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. Therefore Adonizedek king of Jerusalem sent to Hoham king of Hebron, and to Piram king of Jarmuth, and to Yaphiah king of Lachish, and to Debir king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, so that we may attack Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together, and went up, they and all their armed hosts, and encamped before Gibeon, and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua to the camp to Gilgal, saying, Slack not your hand from your slaves, come up to us quickly and rescue us, and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that live in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Joshua withdrew from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. YHWH spoke to Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them into your hand, there will not a man of them stand before you. Joshua therefore came to them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night. And YHWH broke them before Israel and killed them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goes up to Beth-horon, and attacked them to Azekah and to Makkedah. And it came to pass as they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down to Beth-horon, that YHWH cast down great stones from the sky upon them to Azekah, and they died. There were more that died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel had killed with the sword. Then Joshua spoke to YHWH in the day when YHWH delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand you still upon Gibeon, and moon, in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still and the moon stood still, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the mid-sky, and did not accelerate to go down for about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that YHWH listened to the voice of a man, for YHWH fought for Israel. And Joshua returned and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. But these 5 kings fled, and hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And it was told Joshua saying, The 5 kings are found hidden in a cave at Makkedah. Then Joshua said, Roll great stones upon the mouth of the cave, and set men by it for to guard them, and remain you not, but pursue after your enemies, and attack the rear guard of them. Suffer them not to enter into their cities, because YHWH Elohim has delivered them into your hand. And it came about when Joshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, until they were consumed, that the rest that remained of them entered into fenced cities. And all the people returned to the camp to Joshua at Makkedah in peace, none moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. Then Joshua said, Open the mouth of the cave and bring out those 5 kings to me out of the cave. And they did so, and brought out those 5 kings to him out of the cave, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. And it came about, when they brought out those kings to Joshua, that Joshua called for all the men of Israel, and said to the captains of the men of war that went with him, Come near, put your feet upon the necks of these kings. And they came near and put their feet upon the necks of them. And Joshua said to them, Fear not nor be dismayed, be strong and of good courage, for so will YHWH do to all your enemies against whom you fight. And afterward Joshua killed them, and slew them, and hanged them on 5 trees, and they were hanging upon the trees until sunset. And it came about at the time of the going down of the sun, that Joshua commanded, and they took them down from off the trees, and cast them into the cave where they had been hiding. And laid great stones in the cave's mouth that remain until this very day. And that day Joshua captured Makkedah, and attacked it with the edge of the sword, and its king he devoted to destruction, them and all the living that were in it, he let none remain. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he did to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua passed from Makkedah, and all Israel with him, to Libnah, and fought against Libnah, and YHWH delivered it also, and its king, into the hand of Israel, and he attacked it with the edge of the sword. And all the living that were in it, he let none remain there, but did to its king as he did to the king of Jericho. And Joshua passed from Libnah, and all Israel with him, to Lachish, and encamped against it and fought against it. And YHWH delivered Lachish into the hand of Israel that took it on the 2nd day, and attacked it with the edge of the sword, and all the living that were there, according to all that he had done to Libnah. Then Horam king of Gezer came up to help Lachish, and Joshua attacked him and his people, until he had left him none remaining. And from Lachish Joshua passed to Eglon, and all Israel with him, and they encamped against it and fought against it. And they took it on that day, and attacked it with the edge of the sword, and all the living that were in it he devoted to destruction that day, according to all that he had done to Lachish. And Joshua went up from Eglon, and all Israel with him, to Hebron, and they fought against it, so they took it, and attacked it with the edge of the sword, and its king, and all its cities, and all the living that were in it. He left none remaining, according to all that he had done to Eglon, but devoted it to destruction and all the living that were there. Then Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to Debir, and fought against it, and he took it, and its king, and all its cities, and they attacked them with the edge of the sword, and devoted to destruction all the living that were in it. He left none remaining, as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir, and to its king, as he had done also to Libnah, and to her king. So Joshua attacked all the country of the hills, and of the south, and of the lowland, and of the springs, and all their kings, he left none remaining, but devoted to destruction all that breathed, as YHWH Elohim of Israel commanded. And Joshua attacked them from Kadesh Barnea even to Gaza, and all the country of Goshen, even to Gibeon. And all these kings and their land did Joshua take at one time, because YHWH Elohim of Israel fought for Israel. And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. And it came about, when Jabin king of Hazor had heard those things, that he sent to Jobab king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Achshaph, and to the kings that were on the north of the mountains, and of the plain south of Chinneroth, and in the valley, and in the borders of Dor on the west, and to the Canaanite on the east and on the west, and to the Amorite, Hittite, Perizzite, and Jebusite in the mountains, and to the Hivite under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. And they went out, they and all their armed camps with them, many people, even as the sand that is on the seashore in multitude, with horses and chariots very many. And when all these kings were met together, they came and pitched together at the waters of Merom, to fight against Israel. And YHWH spoke to Joshua, Be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver them up all slain before Israel, you will hamstring their horses, and burn their chariots with fire. So Joshua came, and all the people of war with him, against them by the waters of Merom suddenly, and they fell upon them. And YHWH delivered them into the hand of Israel, who attacked them and chased them to Great Zidon, and to Misrephothmaim, and to the valley of Mizpah eastward, and they killed them, until they left them none remaining. And Joshua did to them as YHWH intended, he hamstrung their horses, and burnt their chariots with fire. And Joshua at that time turned back, and took Hazor, and attacked its king with the sword, because Hazor formerly was the head of all those kingdoms. And they attacked all the living that were there with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction, there were not any left to breathe, and he burnt Hazor with fire. And all the cities of those kings, and all the kings of them, did Joshua take, and attack them with the edge of the sword, and he devoted them to destruction, as Moses the slave of YHWH commanded. But as for the cities that stood still in their strength, Israel burnt none of them, except Hazor only, that did Joshua burn. And all the spoil of these cities, and the cattle, the children of Israel took for a spoil to themselves, but every man they killed with the edge of the sword, until they had destroyed them, neither left they any to breathe. As YHWH commanded Moses his slave, so did Moses command Joshua, and so did Joshua, he left nothing undone of all that YHWH commanded Moses. So Joshua took all that land, the hills, and all the south country, and all the land of Goshen, and the valley, and the plain, and the mountain of Israel, and the valley of the same, even from the Mount Halak, that goes up to Seir, even to Baal-gad in the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took, and attacked them and killed them. Joshua made war a long time, with all those kings. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, except the Hivites the inhabitants of Gibeon, all others they captured in battle. Because it was of YHWH to harden their hearts, that they should come against Israel in battle, that he might devote them to destruction, and that they might have no favor, but that he might destroy them, as YHWH commanded Moses. And at that time Joshua came, and cut down the Anakims, a race of giants, from the mountains, from Hebron, Debir, Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, and from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction with their cities. There were none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel, only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod, there remained some. So Joshua took the whole land, according to all that YHWH said to Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to their divisions by their tribes. And the land then rested from war. Now these are the kings of the land, that the children of Israel attacked, and possessed their land on the other side Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon, and all the plain on the east, Sihon king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and D from Aroer, that is upon the bank of the river Arnon, and from the middle of the river, and from half Gilead, even to the river Jabbok, that is the border of the children of Ammon, and from the plain to the sea of Chinneroth on the east, and to the sea of the plain, even the Salt Sea, Dead Sea, on the east, the way to Beth Yeshimot, and from the south, under Ashdoth Pisgah, and the coast of Og king of Bashan, that was of the remnant of the Rephaim, giants, that lived at Ashtaroth and at Edrei, and reigned in Mount Hermon, and in Salcah, and in all Bashan, to the border of the Geshurites and the Machathites, and half Gilead, the border of Sihon king of Heshbon. Them did Moses the slave of YHWH and the children of Israel destroy, and Moses the slave of YHWH gave it for a possession to the Reubenites, and the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And these are the kings of the country that Joshua and the children of Israel attacked on this side of Jordan on the west, from Baal-gad in the valley of Lebanon even to the Mount Halak, that goes up to Seir, that Joshua gave to the tribes of Israel for a possession according to their divisions, in the mountains and in the valleys, and in the plains and in the springs, and in the uninhabited places, and in the south country, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. The king of Jericho, 1, the king of Ai, that is beside Bethel, 1, the king of Jerusalem, 1, the king of Hebron, 1, the king of Jarmuth, 1, the king of Lachish, 1, the king of Eglon, 1, the king of Gezer, 1, the king of Debir, 1, the king of Geter, 1, the king of Hormah, 1, the king of Arad, 1, the king of Libnah, 1, the king of Adullam, 1, the king of Makkedah, 1, the king of Bethel, 1, the king of Tappuah, 1, the king of Heper, 1, the king of Aphek, 1, the king of Lasharon, 1, the king of Madon, 1, the king of Hazor, 1, the king of Shimmermeron, 1, the king of Akshaph, 1, the king of Tanakh, 1, the king of Megiddo, 1, the king of Kadesh, 1, the king of Jokneam of Carmel, 1, the king of Dor in the coast of Dor, 1, the king of the nations of Gilgal, 1, the king of Tirzah, 1, all these 31 kings. Now Joshua was old and stricken in years, and YHWH said to him, You are old and stricken in years, and there remains still very much land to be possessed. This is the land that still remains, all the borders of the Philistines, and all Geshuri, from Sihor, that is before Egypt, even to the borders of Ekron northward, that is counted to the Canaanite, 5 lords of the Philistines, the Gazathites, Ashdothites, Eshkalonites, Jetites, and Ekronites, also the Avites, from the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and Meara that is beside the Sidonians, to Aphek, to the borders of the Amorites, and the land of the Giblites, and all Lebanon, toward the sun rising, from Baal-gad under Mount Hermon to the entering into Hamath. All the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Misrephothmaim, and all the Sidonians, them I will drive out from before the children of Israel, only you divide it by lot to the Israelites for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, with whom the Reubenites and the Gadites have received their inheritance, that Moses gave to them, beyond Jordan eastward, even as Moses the slave of Yhwh gave them, from Aroer, that is upon the bank of the river Arnon, and the city that is in the midst of the river, and all the plain of Medeba to Dibon, and all the cities of Sihon king of the Amorites, that reigned in Heshbon, to the border of the children of Ammon, and Gilead, and the border of the Geshurites and Machathites, and all Mount Hermon, and all Bashan to Salcah, all the kingdom of Og in Bashan, that reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, who remained of the remnant of the Rephaim, giants, for these did Moses kill, and cast them out. Nevertheless the children of Israel expelled not the Geshurites, nor the Machathites, but the Geshurites and the Machathites live among the Israelites until this day. Only to the tribe of Levi he gave no inheritance. The sacrifices of Yhwh Elohim of Israel made by fire are their inheritance, as he said to them. And Moses gave to the tribe of the children of Reuben inheritance according to their families. And their coast was from Aroer, that is on the bank of the river Arnon, and the city that is in the midst of the river, and all the plain by Medeba, Heshbon, and all her cities that are in the plain, Dibon, Bamothbal, Beth-Bamian, Jahaza, Kedemoth, Mephoth, Kirjathaim, Sibmah, and Zareth-Sahar in the mount of the valley. And Beth-Peor, Ashdoth-Pisgah, Beth-Yeshimot, and all the cities of the plain, and all the kingdom of Sihon king of the Amorites, that reigned in Heshbon, whom Moses attacked with the chiefs of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, that were princes of Sihon, living in the country. Balaam also the son of Beor, the soothsayer, did the children of Israel kill with the sword among them that were slain by them. And the border of the children of Reuben was Jordan, and its border thereof. This was the inheritance of the children of Reuben after their families, its cities and its villages thereof. And Moses gave inheritance to the tribe of Gad, even to the children of Gad according to their families. And their coast was Yazer, and all the cities of Gilead, and half the land of the children of Ammon, to Aroer that is before Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Rammizpeh, and Betonim, and from Mahanaim to the border of Debir, and in the valley, Beth-Aram, Beth-Nimrah, Succoth, and Zaphon, the rest of the kingdom of Sihon king of Heshbon, Jordan and its border, even to the edge of the sea of Kinnereth on the other side Jordan eastward. This is the inheritance of the children of Gad after their families, the cities, and their villages. And Moses gave inheritance to the half-tribe of Manasseh, and this was the possession of the half-tribe of the children of Manasseh by their families. And their coast was from Mahanaim, all Bashan, all the kingdom of Og king of Bashan, and all the towns of Yair, that are in Bashan, 60 cities, and one half Gilead, and Ashtaroth, and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan, were pertaining to the children of Machir the son of Manasseh, even to the half of the children of Machir by their families. These are the countries that Moses did distribute for inheritance in the plains of Moab, on the other side Jordan, by Jericho, eastward. But to the tribe of Levi Moses gave not any inheritance. Yhwh Elohim of Israel was their inheritance, as he said to them. And these are the countries that the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, that Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, distributed for inheritance to them. By lot was their inheritance, as Yhwh commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes, and for the half-tribe. Because Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and half-tribe on the other side Jordan, but to the Levites he gave no inheritance among them. Because the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, therefore they gave no part to the Levites in the land, except cities to live in, with their suburbs for their cattle and for their substance. As Yhwh commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did, and they divided the land. Then the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, You know the thing that Yhwh spoke to Moses the man of Elohim concerning me and you in Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses the slave of Yhwh sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him word again as it was in my heart. Nevertheless my kinsmen that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed Yhwh Elohim. And Moses adjured on that day saying, Certainly the land where your feet have trodden will be your inheritance, and your children's for the ages, because you have wholly followed Yhwh Elohim. And now see, Yhwh has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, even since Yhwh spoke this word to Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the uninhabited places, and now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. As still I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me, as my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war, both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give me this mountain, where YHWH spoke in that day, for you heard in that day how the Anakims, giants, were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be YHWH will be with me, then I will be able to drive them out, as YHWH spoke. And Joshua blessed him, and gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh Hebron for an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite to this day, because he wholly followed YHWH Elohim of Israel. And the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, that Arba was a great man among the Anakims, giants. And the land had rest from war. This then was the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom. The wilderness of Zin southward was the uttermost part of the south coast. And their south border was from the shore of the Salt Sea, from the bay that looks southward, and it went out to the south side to Malhak Rabbim, and passed along to Zin, and ascended up on the south side to Kadesh Barnea, and passed along to Hezron, and went up to Adar, and turned round to Karka. From there it passed toward Asmon, and went out to the river of Egypt, and the outgoings of the border have been at the sea. This is to you the south border. And the east border was the Salt Sea, even to the end of Jordan. And their border in the north quarter was from the bay of the sea at the uttermost part of Jordan, and the border went up to Bethagla, and passed along by the north of Betharabah, and the border went up to the stone of Bohan the son of Reuben, and the border went up toward Debir from the valley of Achor, and so northward, looking toward Gilgal, that is before the going up to Adumim, that is on the south side of the river. And the border passed toward the waters of En-Shemesh, and the outgoings have been on to En-Rogel, and the border went up by the valley of the son of Hinnom to the south side of the Jebusite, the same as Jerusalem. And the border went up to the top of the mountain that lies before the valley of Hinnom westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants, Rephaim, northward, and the border was drawn from the top of the hill to the fountain of the water of Nephtoah, and went out to the cities of Mount Ephron, and the border was drawn to Baalah, which is Kirath-Jearim, and the border compassed from Baalah westward to Mount Seir, and passed along to the side of Mount Jearim, which is Chisalon, on the north side, and went down to Bethshemesh, and passed on to Timnah, and the border went out to the side of Ekron northward, and the border was drawn to Shikron, and passed along to Mount Baalah, and went out to Jabneel, and the outgoings of the border have been at the sea. And the west border is to the great sea, and its border, this is the border of the sons of Judah all around for their families. And to Caleb the son of Jephunneh he gave a part among the children of Judah, according to the commandment of YHWH to Joshua, even the city of Arba the father of Anak, a race of giant, which city is Hebron. And Caleb drove from there the three sons of Anak, Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai, the children of Anak. And he went up from there to the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjath-Sepher. And Caleb said, He that attacks Kirjath-Sepher, and takes it, to him I will give Achsah my daughter for your woman. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, captured it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter for his woman. And it came about, as she came to him, that she moved him to ask of her dad a field, and she lighted off her donkey, and Caleb said to her, What is it? Who answered, Give me a blessing, because you have given me a south land, give me also springs of water. And he gave her the upper springs, and the lower springs. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Judah according to their families. And the uttermost cities of the tribe of the children of Judah toward the coast of Edom southward were Kabzeel, Eder, Jagur, Kena, Dimnah, Adadah, Kadesh, Hazor, Ithnan, Ziph, Telem, Bealoth, Hazor, Hadadah, Kerioth, and Hezron, that is Hazor. Amam, Shema, Moladah, Hazargada, Heshmon, Beth-Paleh, Hazarshul, Beersheba, Bizothia, Baalah, Azam, Eltolad, Chezel, Hormah, Ziklag, Madmannah, Sansannah, Lebaoth, Shilhim, Ain, Rimmon, all the cities are 29, with their villages, and in the valley, Eshtaol, Zoriah, Ashna, Zanoah, Enganim, Tapua, Enem, Jarmuth, Adullam, Soko, Azekah, Sheriam, Aditham, Gederah, and Gederothaim, 14 cities with their villages, Zenon, Hadashah, Migdalgad, Dilion, Mizpah, Joktheel, Lachish, Bozkath, Eglon, Cabin, Lamam, Kithlish, Gederoth, Beth-Dagon, Naamah, Makkedah, 16 cities with their villages, Libnah, Ether, Ashan, Jiphta, Ashna, Nezeb, Kala, Akzib, and Mareshah, 9 cities with their villages, Ekron, with her towns and her villages, from Ekron even to the sea, all that lay near Ashdod, with their villages, Ashdod with her towns and her villages, Gaza with her towns and her villages, to the river of Egypt, and the great sea, and its border, and in the mountains, Shamir, Jatir, Soko, Dana, Kirjath-Zana, that is Debir, Anab, Eshtemoh, Anim, Goshen, Holon, and Gilo. 11 cities with their villages: Arab, Duma, Eshian, Janam, Beth Tappuah, Aphekah, Humta, Kirjatharba, that is Hebron, and Zair, 9 cities with their villages: Maon, Carmel, Ziph, Judah, Jezreel, Yokdeam, Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah, 10 cities with their villages: Halhul, Bethshur, Gedor, Maaroth, Bethanoth, Eltekon, 6 cities with their villages: Kurath-Baal, that is Kirath Yearim, and Rabbah, 2 cities with their villages. In the wilderness, Beth-Arabah, Middin, Sekakah, Nibshan, and the city of Salt, and En-Gedi, 6 cities with their villages. As for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the children of Judah could not drive them out, but the Jebusites live with the children of Judah at Jerusalem to this day. And the lot of the children of Joseph fell from Jordan by Jericho, to the water of Jericho on the east, to the wilderness that goes up from Jericho throughout Mount Bethel, and goes out from Bethel to Luz, and passes along to the borders of Archi to Ataroth, and goes down westward to the coast of Japhleti, to the coast of Beth-Or on the nether, and to Gezer, and its outgoings have been at the sea. So the children of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim, took their inheritance. And the border of the children of Ephraim according to their families was thus: even the border of their inheritance on the east side was Ataroth-Adar, to Beth-Or on the upper, and the border went out toward the sea to Mishmetha on the north side, and the border went about eastward to Taanath-Shiloh, and passed by it on the east to Janahah, and it went down from Janahah to Ataroth, and to Naarot, and came to Jericho, and went out at Jordan. From Tappuah the border goes westward to the brook of Kanah, and its outgoings have been at the sea. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Ephraim, for their families. And the separate cities for the children of Ephraim were among the inheritance of the children of Manasseh, all the cities with their villages. And they did not drive out the Canaanites that lived in Gezer, but the Canaanites lived among the Ephraimites to this day, and serve under tribute. Now this was the lot for the tribe of Manasseh, because he was the firstborn of Joseph. To Machir the firstborn of Manasseh, the father of Gilead, was given Gilead and Bashan, because he was a man of war. There was also a lot for the rest of the children of Manasseh by their families, for the children of Abiezer and for the children of Helek, and for the children of Azriel and for the children of Shechem, and for the children of Heper, and for the children of Shemida. These were the male children of Manasseh the son of Joseph by their families. But Zelophehad, the son of Heper, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, had no sons, but daughters, and these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, and Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they came near before Eleazar the priest and before Joshua the son of Nun, and before the chiefs, saying, YHWH commanded Moses to give us an inheritance among our brethren. Therefore according to the commandment of YHWH he gave them an inheritance among the kinsmen of their father. And there fell 10 portions to Manasseh, beside the land of Gilead and Bashan, that were on the other side of Jordan, because the daughters of Manasseh had an inheritance among his sons, and the rest of Manasseh's sons had the land of Gilead. And the coast of Manasseh was from Asher to Mishmetha, that lies before Shechem, and the border went along on the right hand to the inhabitants of En-Tappuah. Now Manasseh had the land of Tappuah, but Tappuah on the border of Manasseh belonged to the children of Ephraim. And the coast descended to the river Kanah, southward of the river. These cities of Ephraim are among the cities of Manasseh, and the border of Manasseh is on the north of the river, and its outgoings are at the sea. Southward it was Ephraim's, and northward it was Manasseh's, and the sea is his border, and they met together in Asher on the north, and in Issachar on the east. And Manasseh had in Issachar and in Asher Beth-Shean and her towns, and Ibleam and her towns, and the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, and the inhabitants of Endor and her towns, and the inhabitants of Tanakh and her towns, and the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns, even 3 countries. Still the children of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities, but the Canaanites would abide in that land. Yet it came to pass, when the children of Israel were waxed strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, but did not utterly drive them out. And the children of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, Why have you given me but one lot and one portion to inherit, seeing I am a great people, and abounding as YHWH has blessed me in this manner? And Joshua answered them, If you are a great people, then get up to the wood country, and cut down for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and of the giants, Rephaim, if Mount Ephraim is too narrow for you. Then the children of Joseph said, The hill is not enough for us, and all the Canaanites that live in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both they who are of Beth-Shean and her towns, and they who are of the valley of Jezreel. Then Joshua spoke to the house of Joseph, even to Ephraim and to Manasseh, saying, You are a great people, and have great power. You will not have one lot only, but the mountain will be yours, because it is a wood, and you will cut it down, and its outgoings have been yours, because you will drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots, and though they are strong. And the whole company of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh, and set up the tabernacle at the appointed place there. And the land was subdued before them. And there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes that had not yet received their inheritance. And Joshua spoke to the children of Israel, How long are you slack to go to possess the land that Yahweh Elohim of your forefathers has given you? Enroll out from among you 3 men for each tribe, and I will send them, and they will get up and go through the land, and describe it according to the inheritance of them, and they will come back to me. And they will divide it into 7 parts, Judah will remain in their coast on the south, and the house of Joseph will remain in their coasts on the north. You will therefore record the land into 7 parts, and bring the description here to me, that I may cast lots for you here before Yahweh Elohim. But the Levites have no part among you, because the priesthood of Yahweh is their inheritance, and Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, have received their inheritance beyond Jordan on the east that Moses the slave of Yahweh gave to them. And the men got up and went away, and Joshua charged them that went to record the land, saying, Go and walk through the land and describe it, and come back to me, that I may here cast lots for you before Yahweh in Shiloh. And the men went and passed through the land, and recorded it by cities into 7 parts in a scroll, and came back to Joshua to the camp at Shiloh. And Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before Yahweh, and there Joshua divided the land for the children of Israel according to their divisions. And the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came up according to their families, and the coast of their lot came out between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. And their border on the north side was from Jordan, and the border went up to the side of Jericho on the north side, and went up through the mountains westward, and its outgoings have been at the wilderness of Bethaven, and the border went over from there toward Luz, to the side of Luz, which is Bethel, southward, and the border descended to Ataroth-Adar, near the hill that lies on the south side of lower Beth-Oron. And the border was drawn there, and compassed the corner of the sea southward, from the hill that lies before Beth-Oron southward, and its outgoings have been to Kurath-Baal, which is Kurath-Jearim, a city of the children of Judah. This was the west quarter. And the south quarter was from the end of Kurath-Jearim, and the border went out on the west, and went out to the spring of waters of Nephtoah, and the border came down to the end of the mountain that lies before the valley of the son of Hinnom. And that is in the valley of the Rephaim, giants, on the north, and descended to the valley of Hinnom, to the side of Jepusi on the south, and descended to Enrogel, and was drawn from the north, and went out to Enshemesh, and went out toward Geliloth, which is opposite the ascent to Adumim, and descended to the stone of Bohan the son of Reuben, and passed along toward the side opposite Arabah northward, and went down to Arabah, and the border passed along to the side of Bethegla northward, and the outgoings of the border have been to the north bay of the Salt Sea, to the south extremity of the Jordan. This is the south border. And Jordan was the border of it on the east side. This was the inheritance of the children of Benjamin, by the coasts there from every side, according to their families. Now the cities of the tribe of the children of Benjamin according to their families were Jericho, Bethegla, and the valley of Keziz, Betharabah, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Para, Ophrah, Chepheramonai, Ophni, and Gaba, 12 cities with their villages, Gibeon, Ramah, Beerot, Mizpah, Kephirah, Mozah, Rechem, Urpeel, Tarala, Zelah, Eleph, and Jepusi, which is Jerusalem, Gibeath and Kirjath, 14 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the children of Benjamin according to their families. And the second lot came out for Simeon, even for the tribe of the children of Simeon according to their families, and their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. And they had in their inheritance Beersheba, or Sheba, Moladah, Hazarshul, Bala, Azam, Eltolad, Bethul, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Markaboth, Hazar Susa, Beth Lebaoth, and Sharuhen, 13 cities and their villages, Ain, Remen, Ether, and Ashan, 4 cities and their villages, and all the villages that were around these cities to Baalath Beer, Ramat of the south. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Simeon according to their families. Out of the territory of the children of Judah was the inheritance of the children of Simeon, because the part of the children of Judah was too much for them, therefore the children of Simeon had their inheritance within the inheritance of them. And the third lot came up for the children of Zebulun according to their families, and the border of their inheritance was to Sarid. And their border went up toward the sea, and Marlah, and reached to Dabasheth, and reached to the river that is before Jokneam, and turned from Sarid eastward toward the sun rising to the border of Chisloth-Tabor, and then goes out to Dabaroth, and goes up to Yaphia, and from there passes on along on the east to Gittahefer, to Iddakazin, and goes out to Remen-Mathar to Neah, and the border surrounds it on the north side to Hanathon, and its outgoings have been in the valley of Jiphthahel, and Kadath, Nahalal, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem, 12 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the children of Zebulun according to their families, these cities with their villages. And the fourth lot came out to Issachar, for the children of Issachar according to their families. And their border was toward Jezreel, Chesulloth, Shunem, Hapharaim, Shean, Anaharath, Rabbath, Kishion, Ebetz, Remoth, Engannim, Enhatta, Bethpaz, and the coast reaches to Tabor, Shahishma, Bethshemesh, and the extremity of their borders were at Jordan, 16 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar according to their families, the cities and their villages. And the fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher according to their families. And their border was Helkath, Hali, Beton, Akshaph, Elamelech, Amad, and Mishael, and reaches to Carmel westward, and to Shire-Libnath, and turns toward the sun rising to Bethdagon, and reaches to Zebulun, and to the valley of Jiphthahel toward the north side of Beth-Ink, and Nael, and goes out to Kabul on the left hand, and Hebron, Rehob, Hammon, and Kanah, even to Great Zidon, and then the coast turns to Ramah, and to the strong city Tyre, and the coast turns to Hosah, and the extremities of it are at the sea from the coast to Achzib, Umah also, and Aphek, and Rehob, 22 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher according to their families, these cities with their villages. The sixth lot came out to the children of Naphtali, even for the children of Naphtali according to their families. And their coast was from Heleph, from Alon to Zonanim, Adami, Nekeb, and Jabneel, to Lakum, and the outgoings of it were at Jordan, and then the coast turns westward to Aznoth Tabor, and goes out from there to Hukkok, and reaches to Zebulun on the south side, and reaches to Asher on the west side, and to Judah upon Jordan toward the sunrising. And the fenced cities are Ziddim, Zur, Hamat, Rakkath, Kinnereth, Adama, Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, Adrei, and Hazor, Iron, Migdalil, Horm, Bethanath, and Bethshemesh, 19 cities with their villages. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Naphtali according to their families, the cities and their villages. And the seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families. And the coast of their inheritance was Zorah, Eshtaol, Irshemesh, Shalabin, Ajalon, Jethla, Elon, Thimnathah, Ekron, Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Baalath, Jehud, Beneberak, Gathrimmon, Meharkon, and Rakkon, with the border before Japho. And the coast of the children of Dan extended out too little for them. Therefore the children of Dan went up to fight against Lashem, and took it and attacked it with the edge of the sword and possessed it, and lived there and called Lashem, Dan, after the name of Dan their forefather. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families, these cities with their villages. When they had made an end of dividing the land for inheritance by their coasts, the children of Israel gave an inheritance to Joshua the son of Nun among them. According to the word of YHWH they gave him the city that he asked, even Timnath-Serah in Mount Ephraim, and he built the city, and lived in it. These are the inheritances that Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, divided for an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before YHWH, at the entrance of the tabernacle at the appointed place. So they made an end of dividing the country. YHWH also spoke to Joshua saying, Speak to the children of Israel saying, Appoint out for you the cities of refuge, by which I spoke to you by the hand of Moses, that the slayer that kills anyone unaware and unwittingly may flee there, and they will be your refuge from the avenger of blood. And when he that does flee to one of those cities will stand at the entering of the gate of the city, and will declare his cause in the ears of the elders of that city. Then they will take him into the city for themselves, and give him a place, that he may live among them. And if the avenger of blood pursues after him, then they will not deliver the slayer up into his hand, because he killed his neighbor unwittingly, and did not hate him in the past. And he will live in that city, until he stands before the company for judgment, and until the death of the high priest that will be in those days. Then will the slayer return, and come to his own city, and to his own house, to the city from where he fled. And they appointed Kadesh in Galilee in Mount Naphtali, and Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron, in the mountain of Judah. And on the other side of Jordan by Jericho eastward, they assigned Bethser in the wilderness upon the plain out of the tribe of Reuben, and Ramoth in Gilead out of the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan out of the tribe of Manasseh. These were the appointed cities for all the children of Israel, and for the foreigner that lives among them, that whoever kills anyone unaware might flee there, and not die by the hand of the avenger of blood, until he stands before the company. Then came near the heads of the fathers of the Levites to Eleazar the priest, and to Joshua the son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, and they spoke to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan saying, YHWH commanded by the hand of Moses to give us cities to live in, with their suburbs there for our cattle. And the children of Israel gave to the Levites out of their inheritance, at the commandment of YHWH, these cities and their suburbs. And the lot came out for the families of the Kohathites, and the children of Aaron the priest that were of the Levites, had by lot out of the tribe of Judah, and out of the tribe of Simeon, and out of the tribe of Benjamin, 13 cities, and the rest of the children of Kohath had by lot out of the families of the tribe of Ephraim, and out of the tribe of Dan, and out of the half-tribe of Manasseh, 10 cities. And the children of Gershon had by lot out of the families of the tribe of Issachar, and out of the tribe of Asher, and out of the tribe of Naphtali, and out of the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, 13 cities. The children of Merari by their families had out of the tribe of Reuben, and out of the tribe of Gad, and out of the tribe of Zebulun, 12 cities. And the children of Israel gave by lot to the Levites these cities with their suburbs, as YHWH commanded by the hand of Moses. And they gave out of the tribe of the children of Judah, and out of the tribe of the children of Simeon, these cities that are here mentioned by name, that the children of Aaron, being of the families of the Kohathites, who were of the children of Levi, had, for theirs was the first lot. And they gave them the city of Arba the father of Anak, which city is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, with the suburbs thereof surrounding it. But the fields of the city, and the villages thereof, they gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh for his possession. Thus they gave to the children of Aaron the priest Hebron with its suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Libnah with its suburbs, and Jatir with its suburbs, and Eshtemoa with its suburbs, and Holon with its suburbs, and Debir with its suburbs, and Ain with its suburbs, and Judah with its suburbs, and Bethshemesh with its suburbs, 9 cities out of those 2 tribes. And out of the tribe of Benjamin, Gibeon with its suburbs, Geba with its suburbs, Anatoth with its suburbs, and Almon with its suburbs, 4 cities. All the cities of the children of Aaron, the priests, were 13 cities with their suburbs. And the families of the children of Kohath, the Levites that remained of the children of Kohath, even they had the cities of their lot out of the tribe of Ephraim. Because they gave them Shechem with its suburbs in Mount Ephraim, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Gezer with its suburbs, and Kibzaim with its suburbs, and Beth-Oron with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Dan, Eltekeh with its suburbs, Gibbethon with its suburbs, Ayalon with its suburbs, Gathrimmon with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the half-tribe of Manasseh, Tanakh with its suburbs, and Gathrimmon with its suburbs, 2 cities. All their cities were 10 with their suburbs for the families of the children of Kohath that remained. And to the children of Gershon, of the families of the Levites, out of the other half-tribe of Manasseh they gave Golan in Bashan with its suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Bishtra with its suburbs, 2 cities. And out of the tribe of Issachar, Kishon with its suburbs, Dabareh with its suburbs, Jarmuth with its suburbs, Engannim with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Asher, Mishal with its suburbs, Abdon with its suburbs, Helkath with its suburbs, and Rehob with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Naphtali, Kadesh in Galilee with its suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Hamathir with its suburbs, and Kartan with its suburbs, 3 cities. All the cities of the Gershonites according to their families were 13 cities with their suburbs. And to the families of the children of Merari, the rest of the Levites, out of the tribe of Zebulun, Jokneam with its suburbs, and Karta with its suburbs, Dimnah with its suburbs, Nahalal with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Reuben, Butser with its suburbs, and Jahaza with its suburbs, Kedemoth with its suburbs, and Mephoth with its suburbs, 4 cities. And out of the tribe of Gad, Ramoth in Gilead with its suburbs, to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Mahanaim with its suburbs, Heshbon with its suburbs, Yazer with its suburbs, 4 cities in all. So all the cities for the children of Merari by their families that were remaining of the families of the Levites, were by their lot 12 cities. All the cities of the Levites within the possession of the children of Israel were 48 cities with their suburbs. These cities were each one with their suburbs surrounding them, these were all their cities. And YHWH gave to Israel all the land that he adjured to give unto their forefathers, and they possessed it, and lived there. And YHWH gave them rest all around, according to all that he adjured to their fathers, and there stood not a man of all their enemies before them. YHWH delivered all their enemies into their hand. There failed not one thing of any good thing that YHWH had spoken to the house of Israel, all came to pass. Then Joshua called the Reubenites, and the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, You have observed all that Moses the slave of YHWH commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. You have not left your kinsmen these many days to this day, but have observed the charge of the commandment of YHWH Elohim. And now YHWH Elohim has given rest to your kinsmen, as he promised them. Therefore now return you, and get you to your tents, and to the land of your possession that Moses the slave of YHWH gave to you on the other side of Jordan. But take diligent heed to do the commandment and the law that Moses the slave of YHWH charged you, to love YHWH Elohim, and to walk in all his ways, and to observe his commandments, and to stay close to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your life. So Joshua blessed them, and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh Moses had given possession in Bashan, but to the other one half of it Joshua gave among their kinsmen on this side of Jordan westward. And when Joshua sent them away also to their tents, then he blessed them and he spoke to them saying, Return with much riches to your tents, and with very much cattle, with silver and with gold, and with brass and with iron, and with very much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your families. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned, and left from the children of Israel out of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, in which they have possession, according to the command of YHWH by the hand of Moses. And when they came to the borders of Jordan, that are in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see to. And the children of Israel heard saying, Look, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the one half-tribe of Manasseh have built an altar opposite the land of Canaan, in the borders of Jordan, at the passage of the children of Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole company of the children of Israel gathered themselves together at Shiloh, to go up to war against them. And the children of Israel sent to the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, into the land of Gilead, Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 captains, of each chief house a prince throughout all the tribes of Israel, and each one was a head of the house of their fathers among the thousands of Israel. And they came to the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the half-tribe of Manasseh, to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, So says the whole company of YHWH, What trespass is this that you have committed against the Elohim of Israel, to turn away this day from following YHWH, and that you have erected yourselves an altar, that you might rebel this day against YHWH? Is the depravity of Peor too little for us, from which we are not cleansed until this day, although there was a plague in the company of YHWH, but that you must turn away this day from following YHWH? And it will be, seeing you rebel today against YHWH, that tomorrow he will be angry with the whole company of Israel. Notwithstanding, if the land of your possession is unclean, then pass over to the land of the possession of YHWH, where YHWH's tabernacle settled down, and take possession among us, but rebel not against YHWH, nor rebel against us, in building yourselves an altar beside the altar of YHWH Elohim. Did not Achan the son of Zerah commit a trespass in the thing devoted to destruction, and anger fell on all the company of Israel? And that man perished not alone in his depravity. Then the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh answered, and said to the heads of the thousands of Israel, YHWH Elohim of Elohim, the YHWH Elohim of Elohim, he knows, and Israel he will know, if it is in rebellion, or if in transgression against YHWH, save us not this day, that we have built us an altar to turn from following YHWH, or if to offer on it burnt offering or meat offering, or if to offer peace offerings on it, let YHWH himself require it, and if we have not rather done it for fear of this very thing saying, in time to come your children might speak to our children saying, What have you to do with YHWH Elohim of Israel? Because YHWH has made Jordan a border between us and you children of Reuben and children of Gad, you have no part in YHWH, so will your children make our children stop from fearing YHWH. Therefore we said, Let us now prepare to build us an altar, not for burnt offering, nor for sacrifice, but that it may be a witness between us, and you and our generations after us, that we might do the service of YHWH before him with our burnt offerings, and with our sacrifices, and with our peace offerings, that your children may not say to our children in time to come, You have no part in YHWH. Therefore we said, that it will be, when they should so say to us or to our generations in times to come, that we may say again, Observe the pattern of the altar of YHWH that our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifices, but it is a witness between us and you. Elohim forbid that we should rebel against YHWH and turn this day from following YHWH, to build an altar for burnt offerings, for meat offerings, or for sacrifices, beside the altar of YHWH Elohim that is, before his tabernacle. And when Phinehas the priest, and the captains of the company and heads of the thousands of Israel which were with him, heard the words that the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children of Manasseh spoke, it pleased them. And Phinehas son of Eleazar the priest replied to the children of Reuben, and to the children of Gad, and to the children of Manasseh, Today we have known that YHWH is in our midst, because you have not committed against YHWH this trespass, so then you have delivered the children of Israel out of the hand of YHWH. And Phinehas the son of Eleazar the priest, and the captains, returned from the children of Reuben, and from the children of Gad, out of the land of Gilead, to the land of Canaan, to the children of Israel, and brought them back word. And the thing pleased the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed Elohim, and did not intend to go up against them in battle, to destroy the land in which the children of Reuben and Gad resided. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad proclaimed concerning the altar, that it is a witness between us that YHWH is Elohim. And it came about a long time after YHWH had given rest to Israel from all their surrounding enemies, that Joshua became old and stricken in age. And Joshua called for all Israel, and for their elders, and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and said to them, I am old and stricken in age, and you have seen all that YHWH Elohim has done to all these nations because of you, for YHWH Elohim is he that has fought for you. See, I have divided to you by lot these nations that remain, to be an inheritance for your tribes, from Jordan, with all the nations that I have cut off, even to the great sea westward. And YHWH Elohim, he will expel them from before you, and drive them from out of your sight, and you will possess their land, as YHWH Elohim has promised to you. Be you therefore very courageous to observe and to do all that is written in the scroll of the Torah of Moses, that you turn not aside from it to the right hand or to the left. That you come not among these nations, these that remain among you, neither make mention of the name of their Elohim, nor cause to adjure by them, neither serve them, nor bow yourselves to them. But stay close to YHWH Elohim, as you have done to this day. Because YHWH has driven out from before you great nations and strong, but as for you, no man has been able to stand before you to this day. 1 man of you will chase 1,000, for YHWH your Elohim, he it is that fights for you, as he has promised you. Take good heed therefore to yourselves, that you love YHWH Elohim. Else if you do in any way go back, and cling to the remnant of these nations, even these that remain among you, and will make marriages with them and go into them, and they to you, know for a certainty that YHWH Elohim will no more drive out any of these nations from before you. But they will be snares and traps to you, and scourges in your sides, and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from off this good land that YHWH Elohim has given you. And, look, this day I am going the way of all the earth, and you know in all your hearts and in all yourselves, that not one thing has failed of all the good things that YHWH Elohim spoke concerning you. All has come to pass for you, and not one thing has failed thereof. Therefore it will come to pass, that as all good things have come upon you that YHWH Elohim promised you, so will YHWH bring upon you all the bad things, until he has destroyed you from off this good land that YHWH Elohim has given you. When you have transgressed the covenant pledge of YHWH Elohim that he commanded you, and have gone and served other Elohim, and bowed yourselves to them, then will the anger of YHWH be kindled against you, and you will perish quickly from off the good land that he has given to you. And Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and called for the elders of Israel and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before Elohim. And Joshua said to all the people, Thus says YHWH Elohim of Israel, Your fathers lived on the other side of the flood in ancient times, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nachor, and they served other Elohim. And I took your father Abraham from the other side of the flood, and led him throughout all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his seed, and gave him Isaac. And I gave to Isaac Jacob and Esau, and I gave to Esau Mount Seir, to possess it, but Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. I sent Moses also and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt, according to what I did among them, and afterward I brought you out. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued after your fathers with chariots and horsemen into the Red Sea. And when they cried to YHWH, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them and covered them. And your eyes have seen what I have done in Egypt, and you lived in the uninhabited places, a long season. And I brought you into the land of the Amorites that lived on the other side of Jordan, and they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand, that you might possess their land, and I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and warred against Israel, and sent and called Balaam the son of Beor to curse you, but I would not listen to Balaam, therefore he blessed you still, so I delivered you out of his hand. And you went over Jordan, and came to Jericho, and the men of Jericho fought against you, the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I delivered them into your hand. And I sent the hornet before you that drove them out from before you, even the 2 kings of the Amorites, but not with your sword, nor with your bow. And I have given you a land for which you did not labor, and cities that you built not, and you lived in them, of the vineyards and olive yards that you did not plant, you ate from them. Now therefore fear YHWH, and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the Elohim that your ancestors served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve you YHWH. And if it seems bad to you to serve YHWH, choose you this day who you will serve, whether the Elohim that your ancestors served that were on the other side of the flood, or the Elohim of the Amorites, in whose land you live, but as for me and my house, we will serve YHWH. And the people answered and said, Elohim forbid that we should forsake YHWH, to serve other Elohim, because YHWH Elohim, he it is that brought us up and our ancestors out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, and that did those great signs in our sight, and preserved us in all the journey where we went, and among all the people through whom we passed. And YHWH drove out from before us all the people, even the Amorites that lived in the land, therefore will we also serve YHWH, for he is our Elohim. And Joshua said to the people, You cannot serve YHWH, for he is a holy Elohim, he is a jealous Elohim, he will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins. If you forsake YHWH, and serve foreign Elohim, then he will turn and do you hurt, and consume you, after that he has done you good. And the people said to Joshua, No, but we will serve YHWH. And Joshua replied to the people, You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen yourselves YHWH, to serve him. And they replied, We are witnesses. Now therefore put away, he said, the foreign Elohim that are among you, and incline your heart to YHWH Elohim of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, YHWH our Elohim will we serve, and his voice will we obey. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the scroll of the law of Elohim, and took a great stone, and set it up there under an oak, that was by the sacred place of YHWH. And Joshua said to all the people, Look, this stone will be a witness to us, for it has heard all the words of YHWH that he spoke to us, it will be therefore a witness to you, unless you deny your Elohim. So Joshua let the people depart, every man to his inheritance. And it came to pass after these things, that Joshua the son of Nun, the slave of YHWH died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-Serah, which is in Mount Ephraim, on the north side of the hill of Gosh. And Israel served YHWH all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, and that had known all the works of YHWH, that he had done for Israel. And the bones of Joseph that the children of Israel brought up out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem, in a parcel of ground that Jacob bought from the sons of Hamor the father of Shechem for 100 pieces of silver, and it became the inheritance of the children of Joseph. And Eleazar the son of Aaron died, and they buried him in a hill that pertained to Phinehas his son that was given him in Mount Ephraim. Now after the death of Joshua it came to pass, that the children of Israel inquired, by Urim-Thummim, of YHWH asking, Who will go up for us against the Canaanites first, to fight against them? And YHWH replied, Judah will go up, see, I have delivered the land into his hand. Then Judah said to Simeon his brother, Come up with me into my lot so that we may fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with you into your lot. So Simeon went with him. And Judah went up, and YHWH delivered the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hand, and they killed of them in Bezek 10,000 men. And they found Adonibezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they killed the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But Adonibezek fled, and they pursued after him and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. And Adonibezek said, 70 kings, their thumbs and their big toes cut off, have been gathering under my table, as I have done so had Elohim repaid to me, and they brought him into Jerusalem, and he died there. Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem and had taken it, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. And afterward the children of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites, that lived in the mountains and in the south, and in the valley. And Judah went against the Canaanites that lived in Hebron, now the name of Hebron before was Kirjath-Arba, and they killed Shishai, Ahiman, and Talmai. And from there he went against the inhabitants of Debir, and the name of Debir before was Kirjath-Sepher. Then Caleb said, He that attacks Kirjath-Sepher and takes it, to him will I give Achsah my daughter for your woman. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Achsah his daughter for his woman. And it came about when she came to him, that she moved him to ask of her dad for a field, and she lighted from off her donkey, and Caleb said to her, What do you desire? And she replied to him, Give me a blessing, because you have given me a south land, give me also springs of water. So Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah that lies in the south of Arad, and they went and lived among the people. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they killed the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath, and devoted them to destruction. And the name of the city was called Hormah. Also Judah took Gaza with its territory, and Askelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory too. And Yhwh was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountains, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. And they gave Hebron to Caleb as Moses said, and he expelled from there the 3 sons of Anak, a race of giants. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, but the Jebusites lived with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. And the house of Joseph, they also went up against Bethel, and Yhwh was with them. And the house of Joseph sent to spy out Bethel. Now the name of the city before was Luz. And the spies saw a man come out of the city, and they said to him, Show us, we ask you, the entrance into the city, and we will show you kindness. And when he showed them the entrance into the city, they attacked the city with the edge of the sword, but they let that man go and all his family. And the man went into the land of the Hittites, and built a city, and called the name of it Luz, that is the name of it to this day. Neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshean and its towns, nor Tanakh and its towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor and its towns, nor the inhabitants of Ibleam and its towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and its towns. But the Canaanites continued to live in that land. And it came about, when Israel was strong, that they put the Canaanites to forced labor, and did not dispossess them. Neither did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites that lived in Gezer, but the Canaanites lived in Gezer among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalal, but the Canaanites lived among them, and became a serfdom. Neither did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Akko, nor the inhabitants of Zidon, Alab, Achzib, Helba, Aphik, nor of Rehob. But the Asherites lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Bethshemesh, nor the inhabitants of Bethanath, but they lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless the inhabitants of Bethshemesh and of Bethanath became a serfdom to them. And the Amorites forced the children of Dan into the mountains, because they would not permit them to come down to the valley. But the Amorites would live in Mount Heres and Ayalon, and in Shaalbim. Still the hand of the house of Joseph prevailed, so that they became a serfdom. And the territory of the Amorites was from the ascent of Akrabim, from the rock, and upward. And an angel of Yhwh came up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt, and have brought you to the land that I adjured to your forefathers, and I said, I will never break my covenant pledge with you. And you will make no alliance with the inhabitants of this land, you will throw down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice, why have you done this? Therefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they will be as thorns in your sides, and their Elohim will be a snare to you. And it came to pass, when the angel of Yhwh spoke these words to all the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept. And they called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there to Yhwh. And when Joshua had let the people go, the children of Israel went every one to his inheritance to possess the land. And the people served Yhwh all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of Yhwh, that he did for Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun, the slave of Yhwh died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres, in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill Gosh. And also all that generation were gathered to their ancestors, and there arose another generation after them that knew not Yhwh, nor yet the works that he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel did bad in the sight of Yhwh, and served Baalim. And they forsook Yhwh Elohim of their forefathers, that brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other Elohim, of the Elohim of the people that were around them, and bowed themselves to them, and provoked Yhwh to anger. And they forsook Yhwh, and served Baal and Ashtaroth. And the anger of Yhwh burned against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of plunderers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their surrounding enemies, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. Wherever they went out, the hand of Yhwh was against them for bad, as Yhwh had said, and as Yhwh had adjured to them, and they were greatly distressed. Nevertheless Yhwh raised up judges that delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. But still they would not listen to their judges, but they committed fornication after other Elohim, and bowed themselves to them. They turned quickly out of the way that their fathers walked in, from obeying the commandments of YHWH, but they did not do so. And when YHWH raised them up judges, then YHWH was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of that judge, because YHWH was grieved because of their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came about, when the judge was dead, that they returned, and corrupted themselves more than their ancestors, in following other Elohim to serve them, and to bow down to them. They ceased not from their own practices, nor from their stubborn way. And the anger of YHWH burned against Israel, and he said, Because now this people have transgressed my covenant pledge that I commanded their fathers, and have not listened to my voice, I will also no longer drive out any from before them of the nations that Joshua left when he died. That through them I may test Israel, whether they will observe the way of YHWH to walk in it as their fathers did observe it, or not. Therefore YHWH left those nations, without driving them out quickly, neither delivered he them into the hand of Joshua. Now these are the nations that YHWH left, to test Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan, only for the sake of the generations of the children of Israel's knowing, to teach them war, only those who formerly have not known them, namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites that lived in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal-Hermon to the entering in of Hamath. And they were to test Israel by them, to know whether they would listen to the commandments of YHWH that he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. And the children of Israel lived among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And they took their daughters to be their women, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their Elohim. And the children of Israel did bad in the sight of YHWH, and forgot YHWH their Elohim, and served Baalim and the groves, for idol worship. Therefore the anger of YHWH burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hand of Hushan-Rishathaim king of Mesopotamia, and the children of Israel served Hushan-Rishathaim 8 years. And when the children of Israel cried to YHWH, then YHWH raised up a deliverer for the children of Israel, who delivered them, even Othniel the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger nephew. And the spirit of YHWH came upon him, and he judged Israel and went out to war. And YHWH delivered Hushan-Rishathaim king of Mesopotamia into his hand, and his hand prevailed against Hushan-Rishathaim. And the land had rest 40 years. And Othniel the son of Kenaz died. Then the children of Israel did bad again in the sight of YHWH, and YHWH strengthened Eglon the king of Moab against Israel, because they had done bad in the sight of YHWH. And he gathered to him the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and attacked Israel, and possessed the city of palm trees. So the children of Israel served Eglon the king of Moab 18 years. But when the children of Israel cried to YHWH, then YHWH raised them up a deliverer, Ehud the son of Jerah, a Benjamite, a left-handed man, and by him the children of Israel sent a present to Eglon the king of Moab. But Ehud fashioned himself a dagger that had 2 edges, of a cubit length, 18 inches, and he did belt it under his clothing upon his right thigh. And he brought the present to Eglon king of Moab, and Eglon was a very fat man. And when he had made an end to offer the present, he sent away the people that carried the present. But he himself turned back from the idols that were by Gilgal and said, I have a secret matter for you, O king, who replied, Keep quiet. And all that stood by him went out from him. Then Ehud came to him as he was sitting in a summer roof room that he had for himself alone. And Ehud said, I have a message from Elohim for you. And he got up out of his seat. And Ehud put out his left hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt of the blade, also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the feces came out. Then Ehud went out through the porch, and shut the doors of the roof room after him, and locked them. When he was gone out his slaves came back, and when they saw that, observing the doors of the roof room were locked, they said, Surely he is going to the bathroom in his roof room. And they waited until they were disconcerted, and observed that he opened not the doors of the roof room. Therefore they took a key and opened it up, and lo, their lord was fallen down dead on the surface of the floor. But Ehud escaped while they waited, and passed beyond the idols, and escaped to Sereth. And it came about, when he was come, that he blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the hill country, with him leading them. And he said to them, Follow after me, because YHWH has delivered your enemies the Moabites into your hand. And they went down after him, and took the fords of Jordan toward Moab, and permitted no one to pass over. And they killed of Moab at that time about 10,000 men, all robust and all men of valor, and there escaped not a man. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel. And the land had rest for 80 years. And after him was Shamgar the son of Anath that killed of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he also delivered Israel. And the children of Israel again did bad in the sight of Yhwh, when Ehud was dead. And Yhwh sold them into the hand of Jabin king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, the captain of whose army was Sisera that lived in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried to Yhwh because he had 900 chariots of iron, and for 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the woman of Lapidoth, she judged Israel at that time. And she lived under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim, and the children of Israel came up to her for judgment. And she sent and called Barak the son of Abinoam out of Kedsh-Naphtali and said to him, Has not Yhwh Elohim of Israel commanded, saying, Go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men from the children of Naphtali and from the children of Zebulun? And I will draw for you, to the Kishon river, Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into your hand. Then Barak replied to her, If you will go with me, then I will go, but if you will not go with me, then I will not go. And she replied, I will certainly go with you, notwithstanding the journey that you take will not be for your honor, because Yhwh will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. So Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite that was of the children of Hobab the father in Torah of Moses, had separated himself from the Kenites, and pitched his tent on the plain of Zonaim that is by Kadesh. And they reported to Sisera that Barak the son of Abinoam had gone up to Mount Tabor. Then Sisera gathered together all his chariots, even 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him, from Harosheth of the Gentiles to the Kishon river. And Deborah said to Barak, Up, for this is the day in which Yhwh has delivered Sisera into your hand. Is not Yhwh gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men after him. And Yhwh crushed Sisera, and all his chariots and all his army, with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot, and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots, and after the army to Harosheth of the Gentiles. And all the army of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. But Sisera escaped to his feet to the tent of Yael, the woman of Heber, the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite. And Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned into her into the tent, she covered him with a blanket. And he said to her, Give me, I ask you, a little water to drink because I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk and gave him drink, and covered him. Again he said to her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it will be, when anyone does come and inquire about you and asks, Is there anyone here? That you will say, No. Then Yael, Heber's woman, took a nail from the tent, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to him, and drove the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary, and so he died. And see, as Barak pursued Sisera, Yael came out to meet him and said to him, Come and I will show you the man whom you seek. And when he came into her tent, look, Sisera was fallen dead and the nail was in his temples. So Elohim subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel prospered, and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin king of Canaan. Then Deborah and Barak the son of Abinoam sang on that day singing, Praise you Yhwh for the avenging of Israel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O you kings, give ear, O you princes, I, even I, will sing to Yhwh, I will sing praise to Yhwh Elohim of Israel. Yhwh, when you went out of Seir, when you marched out of the field of Edom, the earth trembled and the skies dropped, the clouds also dropped their water. The mountains flowed with water from before Yhwh, even that Sinai from before Yhwh Elohim of Israel. In the days of Shamgar the son of Anath, in the days of Yael, the highways were unoccupied, and the travelers walked through winding roads. The inhabitants of the villages ceased, they ceased in Israel, until that I arose, Deborah, that I arose, a mother in Israel. They chose new Elohim, then was war in the gates, was there a shield or spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? My heart is toward the governors of Israel, that offered themselves willingly among the people. Bless you Yhwh, mediate, you that ride on tan female donkeys, you that sit in cloth garments and travel the journey. They that are delivered from the sound of archers in the drawing place of water, there will they rehearse the righteous acts of YHWH, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his villages in Israel. Then will the people of YHWH go down to the court of the tabernacle. Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song, arise, Barak, and lead your captivity captive, you son of Abinoam. Then the remnant will have dominion over the waters, compare with reverend, among the people, YHWH came down with me against the mighty. Out of Ephraim was there a root of them against Amalek, after you, Benjamin, among your people, out of Machir came down governors, and out of Zebulun him that handles the pen of the writer. And the chiefs of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar, and also Barak, he was sent on foot into the valley. In the divisions of Reuben, great are the decrees of heart. Why did you stay among the sheepfolds, to hear the hissing of the flocks? For in the divisions of Reuben there were great searchings of heart. Gilead resided beyond Jordan, and why did Dan sojourn in ships? Asher has continued at the haven of the seas, and by his creeks does he tabernacle. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeopardized their lives to the death on the high places of the field. The kings came and fought, then fought the kings of Canaan and Tanakh by the waters of Megiddo, they took no gain of money. They fought from the skies, the star of Messiah in their courses fought against Sisera. The river of Kishon swept them away, that ancient river, the river Kishon. O my life, you have trodden down strength. Then were the horse hoofs broken by the means of the galloping of their valiant ones. Curse Meroz, said a messenger of YHWH, cursing, curse you its inhabitants, for they came not to the help of YHWH, to the help of YHWH among the mighty. Blessed above women will Yael the woman of Heber the Kenite be, blessed will she be above women in the tent. He asked water, and she gave him milk, she brought out butter in a great dish. She put her hand to the nail, and her right hand to the workman's hammer, and with the hammer she killed Sisera, she destroyed his head, when she had pierced and penetrated through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay down, at her feet he bowed, he fell, where he bowed, there he fell down dead. The mother of Sisera looked out at a window, and cried through the lattice, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why delayed are the wheels of his chariots? Her wise ladies answered her, yes, she returned answer to herself, have they not found? Have they not divided the plunder, to every man a damsel or two, to Sisera a plunder of dyed colors, a spoil of dyed cloth of needlework, of dyed colors of needlework on both sides, for the necks of them that take the spoil? So let all your enemies perish, O YHWH, but let them that love him be as the sun when it goes out in its might. And the land had rest 40 years. And the children of Israel did bad in the sight of YHWH, and then YHWH delivered them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because of the Midianites the children of Israel made themselves dens that are in the mountains and caves, and strongholds. And so it was when Israel had sown seed that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites, and the children from the east, even they came up against them, then they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, until you come to Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor donkey. Because they came up with their cattle in their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude, for both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites, and the children of Israel cried unto YHWH. And it came about when the children of Israel cried to YHWH because of the Midianites, that YHWH sent a prophet to the children of Israel that said to them, so says YHWH Elohim of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you out of the house of bondage, and I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drove them out from before you, and gave you their land, and I said to you, I am YHWH Elohim, fear not the Elohim of the Amorites, in whose land you live, but you have not obeyed my voice. And there came an angel of YHWH, and sat under an oak that was in Ophrah, that pertained to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress, to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of YHWH appeared to him, and said to him, YHWH is with you, you mighty man of valor. And Gideon replied to him, O my Adonai, if YHWH be with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where are all his miracles that our ancestors told us of, saying, did not YHWH bring us up from Egypt? But now YHWH has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. And YHWH turned to him and said, go in this, your power, and you have saved Israel out of the hand of Midian, have not I sent you? And he replied to him, O my Adonai, how will I save Israel? Look, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the youngest in my dad's house. And YHWH said to him, Certainly I will be with you and you will attack the Midianites as one man. And he replied to him, If now I have found favor in your sight, then show me a sign that you talk with me. Do not leave from here, I ask you, until I come to you, and bring out my offering and set it before you. And he replied, I will stay until you come back. And Gideon went in, and made ready a female goat and unleavened cakes of an ephah, 3/5 bushel, of flour, the meat he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out to him under the oak, and offered it. And the angel of Elohim said to him, Take the meat and the unleavened cakes, and lay them on this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of YHWH put out the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and there shot up fire out of the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of YHWH walked out of his sight. And when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of YHWH, Gideon said, Alas, O Adonai YHWH! For because I have seen an angel of YHWH face to face. And YHWH replied to him, Peace be to you, fear not, you will not die. Then Gideon built an altar there to YHWH, and called it YHWH Shalom. To this day it is still an Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came about the same night that YHWH said to him, Take your dad's young bull, even the second bull of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that your dad has, and cut down the grove that is by it. And you will erect an altar to YHWH Elohim on the top of this stronghold, by the arrangement, and will take the second bull, and cause to ascend a burnt offering with the wood of the shrine that you cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his slaves, and did as YHWH had said to him, and so it was, because he feared his dad's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, but that he did it by night. And when the men of the city got up early in the morning, see, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the grove was cut down that was by it, and the second bull was offered upon the altar that was erected. And they said one to another, Who has done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon the son of Joash has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, Bring out your son so that he may die, because he has cast down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash replied to all that stood against him, Will you plead for Baal? Will you save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death while it is still morning. If he is an Elohim, let him plead for himself, because one has cast down his altar. Therefore on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, Let Baal plead against him, because he has thrown down his altar. Then all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the children from the east were gathered together, and went over, and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. But the spirit of YHWH came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered after him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also was gathered after him, and he sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and to Naphtali, and they came up to meet them. And Gideon said to Elohim, If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, look, I will put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor, and if the dew is on the fleece only, and it is dry upon all the earth around, then will I know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so, because he got up early the next morning, and squeezed the fleece together, and wrung out the dew from the fleece, a bowl full of water worth. Then Gideon said to Elohim, Let not your anger burn against me, and I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I ask, you, but this once with the fleece, let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon all the ground let there be dew. And Elohim did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon and all the people that were with him, got up early and pitched beside the Harod spring, so that the camp of the Midianites were on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh, in the valley. And YHWH said to Gideon, The people that are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, unless Israel vaunt themselves against me saying, My own hand has saved me. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people saying, Whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and leave early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. And YHWH said to Gideon, The people are still too many, bring them down to the water, and I will refine them there for you. And it will be that of those I say to you, This will go with you, the same will go with you, and of those I say to you, These will not go with you, the same will not go. So he brought down the people to the water, and YHWH said to Gideon, Everyone that laps from the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, him will you set by himself, likewise everyone that bows down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men, but all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And YHWH said to Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped I will save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand, and let all the other people go every man to his place. So the people took food in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men, and the camp of Midian was beneath him in the valley. And it came about that same night, that YHWH said to him, Rise up, get you down to the camp, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you fear to go down, go you with Fury your slave down to the camp. And you will hear what they say, and afterward will your hands be strengthened to go down to the camp. Then he went down with Fury his slave to the outskirt of the armed men that were in the camp. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. And Gideon came in, and lo, a man is recounting to his companion a dream, and said, Lo, a dream I have dreamed, and lo, a cake of barley bread is turning itself over into the camp of Midian, and it comes into the tent, and strikes it, and it falls, and turns it upwards, and the tent has fallen. And his buddy answered and said, This is nothing else except the sword of Gideon the son of Joash, a man of Israel, because into his hand has Elohim delivered Midian, and all the camp. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream, and its interpretation, that he worshipped and returned to the camp of Israel and said, Arise, for YHWH has delivered into your hand the camp of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers, and lamps within the pitchers. And he said to them, Look on me and do the same as me, and see, when I come to the outside of the camp, it will be that, as I do, so will you do likewise. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all that are with me, then you blow the trumpets also on every side of all the camp and say, The sword of YHWH, and of Gideon. So Gideon, and the 100 men that were with him, came to the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets, and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets, and broke the pitchers, and held the lamps in their left hands, and the trumpets in their right hands to blow, and they cried, The sword of YHWH, and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place around the camp, and all the camp ran, and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and YHWH set every man's sword against his companion, even throughout all the army, and the army fled to Bethshittah in Zererot, and to the border of Abel Meholah, to Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim saying, Come down against the Midianites, and take before them the waters to Beth-barah and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters to Beth-barah and Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they killed Oreb upon the rock Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon at the ford of the Jordan. And the men of Ephraim said to him, Why have you served us this way, that you did not call us when you went to fight with the Midianites? And they did argue with him sharply. And he replied to them, What have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Elohim has delivered into your hands the chiefs of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison of you? Then their anger was abated toward him, when he had said that. And Gideon came to Jordan and passed over, he, and the 300 men that were with him, faint, and still pursuing them. And he said to the men of Succoth, Give I ask of you, loaves of bread to the people that follow me because they are faint, and I am pursuing after Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the leaders of Succoth replied, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So Gideon replied, Therefore, when YHWH has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up from there to Peniel, and spoke to them likewise, and the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spoke also to the men of Peniel saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their army with them, about 15,000 men, all that were left of all the armies of the children of the east, because there fell 120,000 men that drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of them that lived in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and attacked the army, for the camp was secure. And when Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah, and Zalmunna, and routed in terror all the army. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sunrise came, and caught a young man of the men from Succoth, and inquired of him, and he described to him the chiefs of Succoth, and their elders, even 77 leaders. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, Look, Zebah and Zalmunna, with whom you did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he pulled down the tower of Penuel, and killed the men of the city. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor? And they answered, As you are so were they, each one resembled the children of a king. And he replied, They were my brothers, even the sons of my mother, as YHWH lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. And he said to Chetar his firstborn, Up and kill them. But the youth drew not his sword because he was fearful, for he was still a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, You rise, and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. So Gideon got up and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, You over us, both you and your son's son also, because you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon replied to them, I will not over you, neither will my son over you, YHWH will rule over you. And Gideon said to them, I would desire a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his plunder. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and did cast their every man the earrings of his plunder. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels, 43 pounds, of gold, besides ornaments and collars, and purple clothing that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were around their camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah, and all Israel went there a-whoring after it, which thing became a snare to Gideon, and to his house. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted up their heads no more. And the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal the son of Joash went and lived in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body born, because he had many women. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also gendered him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. And Gideon the son of Joash died in a good old age, and was buried in the grave of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came about, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again, and committed fornication after Baalim, and made Baalberith their Elohim. And the children of Israel remembered not YHWH Elohim, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness that he had showed to Israel. And Abimelech the son of Jerubbaal went to Shechem to his mother's brothers, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I ask of you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, which is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, that are 70 people, reign over you, or that one reigns over you. Remember also that I am your flesh and bone. And his mother's kinsmen spoke of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 shekels, 1¾ pounds, of silver out of the house of Baalberith, with which Abimelech hired vain and reckless persons that followed him. And he went to his dad's house at Ophrah, and killed his kinsmen the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 people upon one stone, but Jotham the youngest son of Jerubbaal was left because he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Millo, and went and made Abimelech king, by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. And when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice, cried and said to them, Listen to me, you men of Shechem, that Elohim may listen to you. The trees went out at a time to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, You reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, Should I leave my fatness, with which by me they honor Elohim and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, You come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said the trees to the vine, You come and reign over us. And the vine said to them, Should I leave my wine that cheers Elohim and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said all the trees to the bramble, You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in truth you anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow, and if not, let fire come out of the bramble, and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you have done truly and sincerely, in that you have made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done to him according to the deserving of his hands, for my dad fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and you are risen up against my dad's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 people, upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female slave, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother, If you then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice you in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem, and the house of Millo, and let fire come out from the men of Shechem, and from the house of Millo, and devour Abimelech. Then Jotham ran away and escaped and went to Beer, and lived there, for fear of Abimelech his brother. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, then Elohim sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. That the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother that killed them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his kinsmen. And the men of Shechem set men in ambush for him in the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them, and it was told Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed came with his kinsmen, and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. And they went out into the fields and gathered there vineyards, and treaded the grapes, and made merry, and went into the house of their Elohim, and did eat and drink, and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed said, Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is not he the son of Jerubbaal? And Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor the father of Shechem, because why should we serve him? If only this people were under my hand. Then would I remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, Increase your army and come out. And when Zebul the ruler of the city heard the words of Gaal the son of Ebed, his nostrils flared. And he sent messengers to Abimelech privately saying, See, Gaal the son of Ebed and his kinsmen are come to Shechem, and look, they fortify the city against you. Now therefore get up by night, you and the people that are with you, and lie in wait in the field, and it will be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, you will rise early and set upon the city. And lo, when he and the people that are with him come out against you, then you may do to them as you will find occasion. And Abimelech got up, and all the people that were with him by night, and they waited in ambush against Shechem in 4 companies. Then Gaal the son of Ebed went out and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and Abimelech rose up, and the people that were with him, from their ambush. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, Look, there come people down from the top of the mountains. And Zebul replied to him, You see the shadow of the mountains as if they were men. Then Gaal spoke again and said, See, there come people down by the middle of the land, and another company comes along by the plain of Meonanim. Then Zebul said to him, Where is now your mouth, in which you said, Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Is not this the people that you have despised? Go out, I implore you now, and fight with them. And Gaal went out before the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded, even to the entering of the gate. And Abimelech lived at Arumah, and Zebul thrust out Gaal and his kinsmen, that they should not live in Shechem. And it came about on the next day that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. And he took the people and divided them into 3 companies, and waited in ambush in the field and looked, and lo, the people were come out of the city, and he rose up against them and attacked them. Then Abimelech and the company that were with him, rushed forward and stood in the entering of the gate of the city, and the 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and killed them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he took the city, and killed the people that were there, and beat down the city and sowed it with salt. And when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered into the cellar of the house of the Elohim Berith. And it was told Abimelech, that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. And Abimelech went up to Mount Zaman, he and all the people that were with him, and Abimelech took an axe in his hand. And cut down a bough from the trees and took it, and laid it on his shoulder and said to the people that were with him, What you have seen me do, hurry, and do the same as I have done. And all the people likewise cut down every man his bough and followed Abimelech, and put them to the cellar, and set the cellar on fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Thebez, and encamped against Thebez and captured it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and there fled all the men and women, and all from the city and locked it up, and all of them ascended to the top of the tower. And Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and went hard to the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a certain woman cast a piece of a millstone upon Abimelech's head, and broke his skull. Then he called quickly to the young man his armor-bearer, and said to him, Draw your sword and kill me, so that men say not of me, A woman killed him. And his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed every man to his place. So Elohim rendered the wickedness of Abimelech that he did to his dad, in killing his 70 brothers. And all the badness of the men of Shechem did Elohim render upon their heads, and on them came the curse of Jotham the son of Jerubbaal. And after Abimelech there arose to defend Israel Tola the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he lived in Shamir in Mount Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years and died, and was buried in Shamir. And after him arose Yair, a Gileadite, and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 male donkeys, and they had 30 cities that are called Habbothair to this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Yair died, and was buried in Kamon. And the children of Israel did bad again in the sight of Yhwh, and served Baalim and Ashtaroth, and the Elohim of Syria, and the Elohim of Zidon, and the Elohim of Moab, and the Elohim of the children of Ammon, and the Elohim of the Philistines, and forsook Yhwh and served him not. And the anger of Yhwh was burning against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the children of Ammon. And that year they vexed and oppressed the children of Israel, 18 years, all the children of Israel that were on the other side Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilead. Moreover the children of Ammon passed over Jordan to fight also against Judah and against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was exceedingly distressed. And the children of Israel cried to Yhwh saying, We have sinned against you, both because we have forsaken our Elohim, and also served Baalim. And Yhwh replied to the children of Israel, Did I not deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites, from the children of Ammon, and from the Philistines? The Zidonians also, and the Amalekites and the Maonites did oppress you, and you cried to me, and I delivered you out of their hand. Still you have forsaken me, and served other Elohim, therefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry to the Elohim that you have chosen, let them deliver you in the time of your distress. But the children of Israel replied to Yhwh, We have sinned, do you do us whatever seems good to you, deliver us only, we pray you this day. And they put away the foreign Elohim from among them, and served Yhwh, and his heart was grieved for the misery of Israel. Then the children of Ammon were gathered together, and encamped in Gilead. And the children of Israel assembled themselves together, and encamped in Mizpah. And the people and the chiefs of Gilead said one to another, What man is he that will begin to fight against the children of Ammon? He will be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a prostitute, and Gilead gendered Jephthah. And Gilead's woman gendered him sons, and his woman's sons grew up, and they thrust out Jephthah and said to him, You will not inherit in our dad's house because you are the son of a foreign woman. Then Jephthah fled from his kinsmen and lived in the land of Tob, and there were gathered worthless men to Jephthah that went out with him. And it came to pass in process of time, that the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so, that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to bring Jephthah out of the land of Tob, and they said to Jephthah, Come and be our captain so that we may fight with the children of Ammon. But Jephthah replied to the elders of Gilead, Did you not hate me and expel me out of my dad's house? And why are you coming to me now when you are in trouble? And the elders of Gilead replied to Jephthah, Therefore we turn again to you now so that you may go with us, and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our chief over all the inhabitants of Gilead. And Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, If you bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and Yhwh delivers them before me, will I be your chief? And the elders of Gilead replied to Jephthah, Yhwh be witness between us, if we do not so do according to your words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him chief and captain over them, and Jephthah uttered all his words before Yhwh in Mizpah. And Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon saying, What have you to do with me, that you are coming against me to fight in my land? And the king of the children of Ammon answered to the messengers of Jephthah, Because Israel took away my land when they came up out of Egypt, from Arnon even to Jabbok, and to Jordan, now therefore restore those lands again peaceably. But Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the children of Ammon, and said to him, Thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon, but when Israel came up from Egypt, and walked through the uninhabited places to the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom saying, Let me I ask you, pass through your land, but the king of Edom would not listen. And in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent, and Israel resided in Kadesh. Then they went along through the uninhabited places, and skirted around the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab. And camped on the other side of Arnon, but came not within the border of Moab, because Arnon was on the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, Let us pass we ask you, through your land into my region. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory, but Sihon gathered all his people together, and camped in Jahaz and fought against Israel. And YHWH Elohim of Israel delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they attacked them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. And they possessed all the territory of the Amorites, from Arnon even to Jabbok, and from the uninhabited places even to Jordan. So now YHWH Elohim of Israel has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel, and should you now possess it? Will you not possess what Chemosh your Elohim gives you to possess? So, whoever YHWH our Elohim will drive out from before us, that we will possess. And now are you any better than Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them, while Israel lived in Heshbon and its towns, and in Aroer and its towns, and in all the cities that are along by the coasts of Arnon for 300 years? Why therefore did you not recover them within that time? Therefore I have not sinned against you, but you do me wrong to war against me. YHWH the judge be judged this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. But the king of the children of Ammon listened not to the words of Jephthah that he sent him. Then the spirit of YHWH came upon Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he passed over to the children of Ammon. And Jephthah vowed a vow to YHWH and said, If you will without fail deliver the children of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, will certainly be YHWH's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So Jephthah passed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and YHWH delivered them into his hands. And he attacked them from Aroer, even until you come to Minnith, even 20 cities, and to the plain of the vineyards with a very great slaughter. So the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. And Jephthah came to Mizpah to his house, and lo, his daughter came out to meet him with tambourine and with dancing, and she was his only child, other than her he had neither son nor daughter. And it came about, when he saw her, that he tore his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter! You have brought me very low, and you are one of them that trouble me because I have opened my mouth to YHWH, and I cannot go back. And she said to him, My dad, if you have opened your mouth to YHWH, do to me according to what has proceeded out of your mouth, for as much as YHWH has taken vengeance for you of your enemies, even of the children of Ammon. But she said to her dad, Let this thing be done for me, leave me alone for 2 months, that I may go up and down upon the mountains, and weep bitterly for my virginity, I and my maidens. And he said, Go, and he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her maidens, and wept bitterly for her virginity upon the mountains. And it came about at the end of 2 months, that she returned to her dad, who did with her according to his vow that he had vowed, and she had sexual relations with no man. And it was a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to recount the story of the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in a year. And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and went northward, and said to Jephthah, Why did you pass over to fight against the children of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house upon you with fire. But Jephthah replied to them, I and my people were at great strife with the children of Ammon, and when I called you, you delivered me not out of their hands. And when I saw that you delivered me not, I put my life in my hands and passed over against the children of Ammon, and YHWH delivered them into my hand. Therefore why are you then come up to me this day to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead, and fought with Ephraim, and the men of Gilead attacked Ephraim, because they said, You Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites, and among the Manassites. And the Gileadites took the passages of Jordan before the Ephraimites, and it was so, that when those Ephraimites that were escaped said, Let me go over, that the men of Gilead replied to him, Are you an Ephraimite? If he said, No, then they replied to him, Say now Shibboleth, but he said Sibboleth instead, because he could not frame his words to pronounce it right. Then they took him and killed him at the passages of Jordan, and there fell at that time of the Ephraimites 42,000. And Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then died Jephthah the Gileadite, and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And after him Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel. And he had 30 sons, and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad, and took in 30 daughters from abroad for his sons. And he judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. And after him Elon, a Zebulunite, judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon the Zebulunite died, and was buried in Ayalon in the country of Zebulun. And after him Abdon the son of Hillel, a Parathonite, judged Israel. And he had 40 sons and 30 nephews, that rode on 70 male donkeys, and he judged Israel 8 years. And Abdon the son of Hillel the Parathonite died, and was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. And the children of Israel did bad again in the sight of YHWH, and YHWH delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his woman was sterile, and gendered not. And the angel of YHWH appeared to the woman and said to her, See now, you are sterile and gender not, but you will conceive and gender a son. Now therefore observe, and drink no wine or strong drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because lo, you will conceive and gender a son, and no razor will come on his head because the child will be a Nazarite to Elohim from the womb, and he will begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. Then the woman came and told her husband saying, A servant of Elohim came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of an angel of Elohim, very dreadful, but I asked him not from where he came, neither did he tell me his name, but he said to me, See, you will conceive and gender a son, and now, drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat anything unclean because the child will be a Nazarite to Elohim from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to YHWH and said, O my Adonai, let the servant of Elohim that you did send come again to us, and teach us what we will do to the child that will be born. And Elohim listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of Elohim came again to the woman as she sat in the field, but Manoah her husband was not with her. And the woman quickly hurried and ran, and showed her husband and said to him, Look, the servant has appeared to me, that came to me the other day. And Manoah got up, and followed his woman and came to the servant and said to him, Are you the servant that spoke to the woman? And he replied, I am. Then Manoah said, Now let your words come to pass, what is the custom of the youth and his work? And the angel of YHWH replied to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman let her observe. She may not eat of anything that comes of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat anything unclean, all that I commanded her let her observe. And Manoah replied to the angel of YHWH, I ask you, let us detain you until we will have prepared a young male goat for you. And the angel of YHWH replied to Manoah, Though you detain me, I will not eat of your bread, and if you will offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to YHWH. Because Manoah knew not that he was an angel of YHWH. So Manoah said to the angel of YHWH, What is your name, that when your sayings come to pass we may do you honor? And the angel of YHWH replied to him, Why do you ask after my name, seeing it is incomprehensible? So Manoah took a young male goat with a grain offering, and offered it upon a rock to YHWH, and the angel did wondrously, and Manoah and his woman looked on. Because it came about, when the flame went up toward the sky from off the altar, that the angel of YHWH ascended in the flame of the altar. And Manoah and his woman looked at it, and fell on their faces to the ground. But the angel of YHWH did no more appear to Manoah and to his woman. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of YHWH. And Manoah said to his woman, We will certainly die, because we have seen Elohim. But his woman replied to him, If YHWH were pleased to kill us he would not have received a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, neither would he have showed us all these things, nor would he have at this time told us such things as these. And the woman gendered a son and called his name Samson, and the child grew, and YHWH blessed him. And the spirit of YHWH began to move him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. And Samson went down to Timnath, and saw a woman in Timnath from the daughters of the Philistines. And he came up, and told his dad and his mother and said, I have seen a woman in Timnath from the daughters of the Philistines, now therefore get her for me to be my woman. Then his dad and his mother replied to him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of your kinsmen or among all my people, that you go to take a woman from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his dad, Get her for me because she pleases me well. But his dad and his mother knew not that it was of YHWH, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, because at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Then Samson went down, and his dad and his mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and look, a young lion roared against him. And the spirit of YHWH came mightily upon him, and he tore it as he would have torn a young male goat, and he had nothing in his hands, but he told not his dad or his mother what he had done. And he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and see, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. And he took of it in his hands, and went on eating, and came to his dad and mother, and he gave to them and they did eat, but he told them not that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So his dad went down to the woman and Samson made there a banquet, for so was the custom of the young men to do. And it came about, when they saw him, that they brought 30 friends to be with him. And Samson said to them, I will now put out a riddle to you, if you can certainly declare it to me within the 7 days of the banquet, and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot declare it to me, then you will give me 30 sheets and 30 change of clothing. And they said to him, Put forward your riddle so that we may hear it. And he replied to them, Out of the eater came forth food, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. But they could not in 3 days make known the riddle. And it came about on the 7th day, that they said to Samson's woman, Entice your husband so that he may declare to us the riddle, unless we burn you and your dad's house with fire. Have you called us to take what we have? Is it not so? Then Samson's woman wept before him and said, You do but hate me and do not love me. You have put forth a riddle to the children of my people, and have not told it to me. And he replied to her, Look, I have not told it to my dad nor my mother, and will I tell it to you? And she wept before him all the 7 days, while their banquet lasted, and it came about on the 7th day that he told her, because she laid sore into him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people. Then the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he replied to them, If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. And the spirit of YHWH came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and killed 30 men of them and took their plunder, and gave change of clothing to them that made known the riddle. Then his anger burned and he withdrew to his dad's house. But Samson's woman was given to his companion who had been as his friend. But it came about around the time of wheat harvest that Samson visited his woman and brought a young male goat, and he said, I will go into my woman to the bedroom. But her dad would not permit him to go in. But her dad said, I truly thought that you had utterly hated her, therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister prettier than she is? Take her, I ask of you, instead of her. And Samson said concerning them, Now will I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and took firebrands, and turned tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the middle between 2 tails. And when he had set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing corn of the Philistines, and burnt up both the shocks, and also the standing corn, with the vineyards and olives. Then the Philistines said, Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he had taken his woman and given her to his companion. Then the Philistines came up, and burnt her and her dad with fire. And Samson said to them, Though you have done this, still I will be avenged of you, and after that I will stop. And he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter, and he went down and lived in the top of the Edom cliff. Then the Philistines went up, and camped in Judah, and spread themselves in Lehi. And the men of Judah said, Why are you come up against us? And they answered, To bind Samson we have come, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the top of the Edom cliff and said to Samson, Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you have done to us? And he replied to them, As they did to me, so have I done to them. And they said to him, We are come down to bind you so that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, Promise me that you will not fall upon me yourselves. And they spoke to him saying, No, but we will bind you securely, and deliver you into their hands, but certainly we will not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the spirit of YHWH came mightily upon him, and the cords that were on his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his ropes loosened from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of a donkey, and put out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. And Samson said, With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of a donkey I have killed 1,000 men. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramathlehi, height of a jawbone. And he was extremely thirsty, and called on YHWH and said, You have given this great deliverance into the hand of your slave, and now I will die for thirst, and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? But Elohim split a hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water out of it, and when he had drunk, his vigor returned and he revived. Therefore he called the name of it En Hakkore, spring of one calling, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Then Samson went to Gaza and saw there a prostitute and went in unto her. And it was told the Gazites saying, Samson has come here. And they boxed him in and lay in ambush for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all that night saying, In the morning, when it is day we will kill him. And Samson rested until midnight, and got up at midnight and took the doors of the gate of the city, and its 2 posts. He went away with them, bars and all, and put them on his shoulders and carried them up to the top of a hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass afterward, that he loved a woman in the valley of Sork, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her, and said to her, Entice him and see where his great strength comes from, and by what means we may prevail against him. Then we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give you from every one of us 1,100 shekels of silver, 28 pounds. And Delilah said to Samson, Tell me, I ask you, where does your great strength come from, and how might you be bound to afflict you? And Samson replied to her, If they bind me with 7 green remnants that were never dried, then I will become weak and be as any other man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green remnants that had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in ambush, staying with her in the room. And she said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he broke the remnants, as a thread of flax is broken when it touches the fire. So his strength was not revealed. Then Delilah said to Samson, Look, you have mocked me and told me lies, now tell me, I ask you, how you might be bound. He replied to her, If they bind me securely with new ropes that never were occupied, then I will be weak, and be as any other man. Delilah therefore took new ropes, and bound him with them and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And there were people in ambush staying in the room, but he broke them from off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, Now you have mocked me and told me lies, tell me how you might be bound. And he replied to her, If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the loom. And she fastened it with the pin, and said to him, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep, and went away with the pin of the beam, and with the loom. And she said to him, How can you say I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me where your great strength comes from. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him so that his emotions were vexed to death, that he told her all his heart and said to her, There has not come a razor upon my head because I have been a Nazirite to Elohim from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will go from me and I will become weak and be like any other man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, because he has shown me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought money in their hand. And she made him sleep upon her knees, and she called for a servant, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head, and she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, The Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times before, and shake myself. And he knew not that YHWH was departed from him. But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza, and bound him with fetters of brass, and he did grind in the prison house. But the hair of his head began to grow back again after he was shaved. Then the lords of the Philistines gathered themselves together for offering a great sacrifice to Dagon their Elohim and to rejoice, because they said, Our Elohim has delivered Samson our enemy into our hands. And when the people saw him, they praised their Elohim, for they said, Our Elohim has delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country that killed many of us. And it came about, when their hearts were merry, that they said, Call for Samson so that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him between the pillars. And Samson said to the boy that held him by the hand, Permit me that I may feel the pillars where the house stands on, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there, and there were on the roof about 3,000 men and women, that watched while Samson was made mocking sport of. Then Samson called to YHWH and said, O Adonai YHWH, remember me, I pray you, and strengthen me, I pray you, only this once, O Elohim, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it was supported, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell on the lords, and upon all the people that were there. So the dead that he executed at his death were more than those that he killed in his lifetime. Then his kinsmen and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the grave of Manoah his father. And he judged Israel 20 years. And there was a man of Mount Ephraim, whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, The 1,100 shekels of silver, 28 pounds, that were taken from you, about which you cursed and spoke of also in my ears, look, the silver is with me, I took it. And his mother replied, Blessed are you of YHWH my son. And when he had restored the 1,100 shekels of silver, 28 pounds, to his mother said, I had consecrated the silver to YHWH from my hand for my son, to make an idol and a cast metal image, now therefore I will restore it to you. Still he restored the money to his mother, and his mother took 200 shekels, 5 pounds, of silver, and gave them to the founder, who made from it an idol and a cast metal image, and they were in the house of Micah. And the man Micah had a house of Elohim and made an ephod, and Teraphim, surrogate Urim-Thummim, and consecrated one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel, but everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And there was a young man out of Bethlehem Judah of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he traveled there. And the man departed out of the city from Bethlehem Judah to travel where he could find a place, and he came to Mount Ephraim to the house of Micah, as he journeyed. And Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" And he replied to him, "I am a Levite of Bethlehem Judah, and I go to travel where I may find a place." And Micah said to him, "Live with me and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver, 4 ounces, by the year, and a suit of apparel and your provisions." So the Levite went in. And the Levite was content to live with the man, and the young man was to him as one of his sons. And Micah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know that YHWH will do me good, seeing I have a Levite to my priest." In those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of the Danites desired themselves an inheritance to live in, for up to that time all their inheritance had not fallen to them from among the tribes of Israel. And the children of Dan sent from their family 5 men from their coasts, men of valor, from Zorah and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. And they said to them, "Go, search the land," and they came into the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah and lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young man the Levite, and they turned in there and said to him, "Who brought you here? And what are you in this place for? And what do you do?" And he replied to them, "This and that has Micah dealt with me, and has hired me, and I am his priest." And they said to him, "Inquire, by Urim-Thummim, we ask you, of Elohim, so that we may know whether our journey that we go will be prosperous." And the priest replied to them, "Go and prosper, before YHWH is your journey on which you go." Then the 5 men left and came to Laish and saw the people that were there, how they lived carelessly after the manner of the Zidonians, quiet and secure, and there was no occupying authority in the land that might put them to be confounded in anything. And they were far from the Zidonians, and had no business with anyone. And they came to their kinsmen to Zorah and Eshtaol, and their kinsmen said to them, "What do you have to say?" And they said, "Rise, and we will go up against them, because we have seen the land, and lo, very good, and you are keeping silent. Be not slothful to go, to enter to possess the land. When you go, you will come to a people secure and to a large land, because Elohim has given it into your hands, a place where there is no one of anything that is in the earth." And there went from there from the family of the Danites, out of Zorah and out of Eshtaol, 600 men girded with weapons of war. And they went up and camped in Kirath-Jearim, in Judah, therefore they called that place Mahanaim to this day. See, it is behind Kirath-Jearim. And they passed there to Mount Ephraim and came to the house of Micah. Then answered the 5 men that went to spy out the country of Laish, and said to their kinsmen, "Do you know that there is in this house an ephod, teraphim, surrogate Urim-Thummim, and an idol and a cast metal image? Now therefore, consider what you have to do." And they turned in there, and came to the house of the young man the Levite, even to the house of Micah, and saluted him. And the 600 men girded with their weapons of war that were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. And the 5 men that went to spy out the land went up and came in there, and took the idol, and the ephod, and teraphim, surrogate Urim-Thummim, and the cast metal image. And the priest stood in the entrance of the gate with the 600 men that were girded with weapons of war. And these went into Micah's house and seized the idol, the ephod and teraphim, surrogate Urim-Thummim, and the cast metal image. Then the priest said to them, "What are you doing?" And they say to him, "Keep silent, lay your hand on your mouth, and go with us, and be to us for a father and for a priest. Is it better your being a priest to the house of one man, or your being priest to a tribe and to a family in Israel?" And the priest's heart was gladdened, and he took the ephod and teraphim, surrogate Urim-Thummim, and the idol, and went in the midst of the people. So they turned and departed, and put the children and the cattle and their goods in front of them. And when they were a good ways from the house of Micah, the men that were in the houses near to Micah's house were gathered together, and overtook the children of Dan. And they cried to the children of Dan. And they turned their faces and said to Micah, "What bothers you that you come with such a company?" And he replied, "You have taken away my Elohim that I fashioned, and the priest and you are gone away, and what have I more? And what is this that you say to me, what troubles you?" And the children of Dan replied to him, "Let not your voice be heard among us again, unless angry men run upon you and you lose your life, with the lives of your household." And the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. And they seized the things that Micah had fashioned, and the priests that he had, and came to Laish, to a people that were at peace and secure, and they attacked them with the edge of the sword, and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, and they had no business with anyone, and it was in the valley that lies by Bethrob. And they built a city and lived there. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their forefather, who was gendered to Israel, but the name of the city before that was Laish. And the children of Dan set up the idol, and Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of the removal of the people from the land. And they set them up Micah's idol that he fashioned, all the time that the house of Elohim was in Shiloh. And it came to pass in those days when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite traveling on the side of Mount Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine out of Bethlehem Judah. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him to her dad's house to Bethlehem Judah, and was there 4 whole months. And her husband got up and went after her, to speak friendly to her and to bring her back, having his slave with him and a couple of donkeys. And she brought him into her dad's house, and when the dad of the girl saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. And his father-in-law, the girl's dad, retained him, and he stayed with him 3 days, and so they did eat and drink and lodge there. And it came about on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he got up to leave, and the girl's dad said to his son-in-law, Comfort your heart with a morsel of bread and afterward go your way. And they sat down, and did eat and drink both of them together, because the girl's dad had said to the man, Be content I ask you and stay all night, and let your heart be merry. And when the man got up to leave, his father-in-law urged him, therefore he lodged there again. And he got up early in the morning on the 5th day to leave, and the girl's dad said, Comfort your heart I ask you. And they stayed until afternoon, and they did eat, the both of them. And when the man got up to leave, he and his concubine and his slave, his father-in-law, the girl's dad, said to him, Look, now the day draws toward evening, I urge you to stay all night. See, the day grows to an end, lodge here so that your heart may be merry, and tomorrow get yourself off early on your way, that you may go home. But the man would not stay that night, but he got up and left and came toward Jebus, which is Jerusalem, and there were with him 2 donkeys saddled, his concubine also was with him. And when they were by Jebus, the day was far spent, and the slave said to his master, Come I ask you, and let us turn in into this city of the Jebusites and lodge in it. And his master said to him, We will not turn aside here into the city of a foreigner, that is not of the children of Israel, we will pass over to Gibeah. And he said to his slave, Come and let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night, in Gibeah or in Ramah. And they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them when they were by Gibeah, that belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and to lodge in Gibeah, and when he went in he sat himself down in a street of the city, because there was no man that took them into his house to lodge. And look, there came an old man from his work out of the field at sunset, which was also from Mount Ephraim, and he lived in Gibeah, but the men of the locality were Benjamites. And when he had lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city, and the old man said, Where are you going and where do you come from? And he replied to him, We are passing over from Bethlehem Judah to the sides of the hill country of Ephraim, I come from there, and I go to Bethlehem Judah, and to the house of YHWH I am going, and there is none taking me into their house. Still there is both straw and provender for our donkeys, and there is bread and wine also for me and for your concubine, and for the young man that is with your slaves, there is no lack of anything. And the old man replied, Peace be with you, however let all your needs lie upon me, only do not lodge in the street. So he brought him into his house, and gave feed to the donkeys, and they washed their feet and did eat and drink. Now as they were making their hearts merry, lo, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, worthless and base, beset the house all around, and beat at the door and spoke to the master of the house, the old man saying, Bring out the man that came into your house so that we may have sexual relations with him. And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, No, my kinsmen, no, I ask you, do not so wickedly, seeing that this man has come into my house, do not this disgraceful folly. Look, here is my daughter a virgin, and his concubine, them I will bring out now, and you can mishandle them, and do with them what is good to your lustful eyes, but to this man do not do such a profane immorality. But the men would not listen to him, so the man took his concubine and brought her out to them, and they had sex with her, and abused her all that night until the morning, and when the day began to dawn, they let her go. Then the woman came in at sunrise, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was, until it was light. And her master got up in the morning, and opened the doors of the house, and went out to go his way, and lo, the woman his concubine was fallen down at the door of the house, and her hands were upon the threshold. And he said to her, Up, and let us be going, but there was no answer. Then took the man and placed her on the donkey, and the man got up and traveled to his place. And when he was come into his house, he took a knife and laid hold on his concubine, and divided her together with her bones, into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the territories of Israel. And it was so, that all that saw it said, there was no such deed done nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt to this day. Consider this, take advice and speak your minds. Then all the children of Israel went out, and the company was gathered together as one man, from Dan even to Beersheba, with the land of Gilead, to Yhwh in Mizpah, a place in Gilead. And the chiefs of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the gathering of the people of Elohim, 400,000 footmen that drew sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel were gone up to Mizpah. Then the children of Israel said, Tell us, how did this wickedness come about? And the Levite, the husband of the woman that was killed, answered and said, I came into Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine to lodge. And the men of Gibeah rose against me, and beset the house all around upon me by night, and thought to have me killed, and my concubine they raped, and she has died. And I took my concubine and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, because they have committed lewdness and profane actions in Israel. See, you are all children of Israel, give here your advice and counsel. And all the people arose as one man, saying, We will not any of us go to his tent, neither will any of us return into their homes. But now this will be the thing that we will do to Gibeah, we will go up by lot against it. And we will take 10 men out of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000, to get provisions for the people. Then we'll do, at their coming to Gibeah of Benjamin, according to all the profane actions that it has done in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, knit together as one man. And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What wickedness is this that is done among you? Now therefore deliver to us the men, the children of Belial that are in Gibeah, so that we may put them to death, and put away badness from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their kinsmen the children of Israel. But the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities to Gibeah, to go out to battle against the children of Israel. And the children of Benjamin were numbered at that time out of the city 26,000 men that drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, which were numbered 700 chosen men. Among all these people there were 700 chosen men left-handed, everyone could sling stones at a hair's breadth, and not miss. And the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men that drew sword, all these were men of war. And the children of Israel arose, and went up to the house of Elohim, and inquired, by Urim-Thummim, of Elohim, and asked, Which of us will go up first to the battle against the children of Benjamin? And Yhwh replied, Judah will go up first. And the children of Israel got up in the morning, and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel put themselves in formation to fight against them at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah, and destroyed down to the ground from the Israelites that day 22,000 men. And the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves, and set their battle again in formation in the area where they put themselves in formation the first day. And the children of Israel went up and wept before Yhwh until sunset, and inquired, by Urim-Thummim, of Yhwh, saying, Will I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother? And Yhwh replied, Go up against him. And the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah the second day, and destroyed down to the ground of the children of Israel again 18,000 men, all these drew the sword. Then all the children of Israel and all the people went up, and came to the house of Elohim and wept, and sat there before Yhwh, and fasted that day until sunset, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Yhwh. And the children of Israel inquired, by Urim-Thummim, of Yhwh, for the ark of the covenant of Elohim was there in those days, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Will I still again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother, or will I stop? And Yhwh replied, Go up, because tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. And Israel set the ambush around Gibeah. And the children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day, and put themselves in formation against Gibeah, as at other times. Then the Benjamites came out to meet them and were drawn away from the city. They began to attack the Israelites as before, so that around 30 men fell in the open field and on the roadways, one leading to Bethel and the other to Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin said, They are struck down before us, as we did before. But the children of Israel said, Let us flee and draw them from the city to the highways. And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and put themselves in formation at Baal Tamar, And those in ambush from Israel came out of their hiding places, even out of the meadows of Gibeah. And there came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was hard, but they knew not that calamity was near them. And YHWH attacked Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed of the Benjamites that day 25,100 men, all these drew the sword. So the children of Benjamin saw that they were beaten, because the men of Israel gave place to the Benjamites, because they trusted in those in ambush that they had set beside Gibeah. And those in ambush hurried and rushed upon Gibeah, and those who ambushed drew themselves along, and attacked all the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Israel and those in ambush, that they should make a great flame with smoke arising, up out of the city. And when the men of Israel retired in the battle, Benjamin began to attack and kill of the men of Israel about 30 people. For they said, Certainly they are struck down before us, like in the first battle. But when the flames began to arise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and lo, the flames of the city ascended up to the skies. And when the men of Israel turned again, the men of Benjamin were amazed, for they saw that calamity had come upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel to the way of the wilderness, and the battle has followed them, and those who are from the city are destroying them in their midst. So they encircled the Benjamites all around and chased them, and beat them down with ease opposite Gibeah toward the sunrising. And there fell of Benjamin 18,000 men, all these were men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they dealt severely with them in the highways 5,000 men, and pursued hard after them to Gittim, and killed 2,000 men of them. So that all that fell that day from Benjamin were 25,000 men that drew the sword, all these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and escaped to the wilderness to the rock Rimmon, and stayed in the rock Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned again upon the children of Benjamin, and attacked them with the edge of the sword, as well the men from all the city, with the cattle, and all that came to hand. Also they set on fire all the cities that they came to. Now the men of Israel had adjured in Mizpah, saying, There will not any of us give his daughter to Benjamin for a woman. And the people came to the house of Elohim, and stayed there until sunset before Elohim, and lifted up their voices, and wept greatly, and said, O YHWH Elohim of Israel, why is this come to pass in Israel, that there should be today one tribe lacking in Israel? And it came to pass on the next day that the people rose early and built there an altar, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the children of Israel said, Who is there among all the tribes of Israel that came not up with the company to YHWH? Because they had made a great oath concerning those that came not up to YHWH in Mizpah, saying, They will certainly be put to death. And the children of Israel were sorry for them of Benjamin their brother, and said, There is one tribe cut off from Israel this day. How will we do for women for them that remain, seeing we have adjured by YHWH that we will not give them of our daughters for wives? And they said, What one is there of the tribes of Israel that came not up to Mizpah to YHWH? And see, there came none to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the company. Because the people were numbered, and see, there were none of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead there. And the company sent their 12,000 men of valor and commanded them, saying, Go and attack the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and the children. And this is the thing that you will do, you will devote to destruction every male, and every woman that has had sexual relations by man. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins, that had not had sexual relations with any man, and they brought them to the camp to Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. And the whole company sent some to speak to the children of Benjamin that were in the rock Rimmon, and to call peaceably to them. And Benjamin came back at that time, and they gave them the women that they had saved alive from the women of Jabesh Gilead, but there were still not enough for them. And the people were sorry for them of Benjamin, because that YHWH had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. Then the elders of the company said, How will we do for women for them that remain, seeing the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, There must be an inheritance for them that are escaped of Benjamin, so that a tribe is not destroyed out of Israel. But we may not give them women of our daughters, because the children of Israel have adjured, saying, Cursed is he that gives a woman to Benjamin. Then they said, Look, there is a festival of YHWH in Shiloh yearly in an area that is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and on the south of Lebonah. Therefore they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch and observe. If the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in dances, then come you out of the vineyards, and catch you every man his woman from the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it will be, when their fathers or their kinsmen come to us to complain, that we will say to them, Be favorable to them for our sakes. Because we reserved not to each man his wife in the war, because you did not give to them at this time, that you should be guilty. And the children of Benjamin did so, and took them women, according to their number, of them that danced, whom they caught, and they went and returned to their inheritance and repaired the cities, and lived in them. And the children of Israel left from there at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from there every man back to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel, everyone did what was right in their own eyes.